Chapter 513. One could imagine how big of a blow it would be to the morale of the troops, especially since he died too quickly. If he died after a fierce battle, it might arouse the hatred of his subordinates and they would want to avenge him. However, he died without even fighting. What rose in their hearts was not hatred, but fear. Because the gap between them was too big, the originally soaring momentum collapsed in an instant. The orderly charging team was in chaos. What was more tragic was that because of the direct impact, the people at the front subconsciously reined in their horses, and the people at the back crashed into them one after another. At this time, not to mention combat power, they were simply a group of lambs waiting to be slaughtered. On the other hand, Qi Yuan's charging speed did not stop. In the sudden chaos, they did not even pause for a moment and directly pounced on the people like hungry wolves. It just so happened that they finished off the people in the chaos decisively. Behind them, there was a person in armor sitting upright on the back of a horse, holding a seemingly simple but absolutely powerful bow by his side. This person was not Fu Yunting's subordinate, and to a certain extent, he should not be here. However, he was too embarrassed, because he was really moldy all over, so he brought a group of people and sneaked over. He Zhihai clicked his tongue and felt a little helpless about the fact that he did not directly rush to kill, but instead, he shot arrows from behind. This was something he would never do in the past. He should have been on the front line. In Lu Qingdi's opinion, this time, Fu Yunting was really rebelling. Therefore, He Zhihai, who was quite a promising young general, was sent out without hesitation. At Heaven's Gate, although He Zhihai did not know Li Hongyuan's plan, he was not really stupid. From some of Qin Tianming's suggestive words, he could basically guess some of it. Moreover, as a qualified fanboy, he had absolute confidence in Li Hongyuan. Missing? Haha, what kind of joke was this? Even if he didn't have a brain, he would still think that this was something planned by the other party. Therefore, after arriving at Heaven's Gate, he behaved for a period of time and then ran away with his subordinates. Of course, not all of his subordinates were taken away, but the people he brought back to the capital from the northeast were not many, only a little more than 100. Therefore, he was actually quite an unruly person. The first to discover his disappearance was naturally his subordinates, and then they hurriedly reported it to Qin Tianming. Qin Tianming thought for a moment and probably knew where he went. He was also very helpless about this willful and reckless little bastard who had no regard for military discipline. In the end, he just sent him away with 3 words, "Got it." He Zhihai met Li Hongyuan smoothly. Li Hongyuan did not say anything and directly threw him to Fu Yunting. Was He Zhihai going to let go of his disregard for military discipline? He, how naive. He Zhihai aimed his strong bow at a person behind him, and then rushed out with his spear. He Zhihai was born for the battlefield. Even if he was fiercely trained by Li Hongyuan, he would not completely rely on the explosive physical consciousness to fight. However, He Zhihai, who fought with his reason and brain, was absolutely not to be underestimated. It could be said that on the battlefield, even if Li Hongyuan's current strength was stronger than He Zhihai's, he would definitely not be able to kill him. Therefore, those who were originally timid because of the death of their generals were really powerless to fight back when they met this killing god. Li Hongyuan would not pursue people who ran away, but He Zhihai was different. His warhorse had rushed to the battlefield with him countless times, and their cooperation was quite tacit. Because that was really a wolf in a flock of sheep. Along the way, He Zhihai's long spear harvested people's lives. Moreover, the same person basically wouldn't attack twice. After all, even if he didn't kill with one strike, there would be others who would help him finish the job. It should be known that there were quite a few people who were good at finishing the job with him. Therefore, the weakest flank was actually the most ferocious place. This time, the defeat was really too fast. King Virtuous Sage had no choice but to order a retreat. And with this retreat, there was no way to find a fixed place to set up camp. Because Qiyuan's side was really too tight, they simply didn't have a chance to catch their breath. On the 3rd day, the virtuous king brought his people to meet up with another Xiongnu army, which belonged to the northern Xiongnu army. Although there was friction before, it was fine in the end. Therefore, the virtuous king did not think too much about it. However, after the 2 armies met up, the other side suddenly bared their fangs and caught the weary army off guard. The virtuous king of the Western Xiongnu army originally had a huge advantage in terms of numbers, but because of fatigue, they were caught off guard. Therefore, although they did not run away pathetically, they lost a lot of men. After that, the northern Xiongnu army took the initiative to retreat because if they continued to fight, they would definitely be wiped out. After all, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. It was enough to give the Western Xiongnu army a big bite. After all, the Western Xiongnu army would definitely not chase after them. The virtuous king of the Western Xiongnu army wiped his face and ordered the army to regroup and head west. In fact, there were worse things to come. The Western Xiongnu army's food supplies were cut off. Although they were still in Qi Yuan's territory, they had already looted the land after occupying it. Therefore, even if they wanted to rob them now, they could not find a place to rob. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/133648891. HTML. Please click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile version reading website. Bicken.com. Chapter 514. King Dexian was very tenacious and managed to reach the West Xiongnu territory. However, the Qi Yuan army had also caught up. King Dexian had less than 10,000 people left. Originally, most of them were cavalrymen. However, because they ran out of food, they had no choice but to use war horses as food. Thus, the number of war horses had decreased to a few hundred. Of course, because the battle line was longer, the number of West Xiongnu soldiers that stayed in Qi Yuan should be more than the number of soldiers that King Dexian led. However, without a good general, even if these people were brave, they had now become a mob. They were no longer a threat. King Dexian believed that the Qi Yuan soldiers in charge of dealing with these people would be able to deal with them. As for the North Xiongnu people, since they had secretly surrendered to the Qi Yuan, King Jin was merciful and let them off temporarily. He would deal with the West Xiongnu first. That's right, it was only temporary. As the general, Fu Yunting took the lead. Although there were less than 30,000 soldiers following him, they were all cavalrymen. Their spirit and appearance were quite good. Compared to the West Xiongnu people, it was like heaven and earth. With such a difference, how could King Dexian of the West Xiongnu people still want to turn the situation around? The original situation was not very serious. Even if King Dexian of the West Xiongnu people knew that he would not be able to occupy a large area of Qi Yuan in the end, it was not impossible to get a lot of benefits from Qi Yuan. The only regrettable thing was that Dawei, Nanqi, and the other countries did not do anything. This was clearly a good opportunity to divide Qi Yuan. He did not know what those people were thinking, but they did not do anything. And now, he was like a stray dog. Not only that, he had lost so many good men of the Xiongnu people. King Dexian knew that there were many people in the West Xiongnu people who were dissatisfied with him. He also knew the reason behind it. However, he thought that he did not covet the throne. Under the circumstances where he had the trust of his brother, he wholeheartedly wanted the West Xiongnu people to be strong and prosperous. However, in the end, he was first stripped of power and then betrayed. At the most difficult time, he was even cut off from his own people. King Dexian almost cried blood. He thought of his ambitions when he was young and thought of everything that he had sacrificed for this ambition. Now that he had no choice but to face Qi Yuan's army, he could not help but ask himself, was it worth it? Along the way, because Qi Yuan had the absolute advantage, if he wanted to kill them, King Virtuous Sage and the others would have already walked into a dead end. However, they were forced to the border between Qi Yuan and the West Xiongnu people. They were like mice being toyed with by a cat. Even though they knew this was the case, they still persisted in escaping. However, they still held on to a little bit of luck, hoping that at some point, they would meet the reinforcements sent by the king. As the days passed, that little bit of hope was gradually shattered. Now, they did not want to run anymore. Xiongnu men, even if they were to die, they had to be brave and fearless. Therefore, even if they did not have any strength left, their eyes were like those of wolves in the grassland. They were King Dexian's bodyguards and were his absolute supporters. Therefore, they would not frown even if they were to die with King Dexian. Fu Yunting reined in his horse. There was a trace of seriousness on his face. When a trapped beast knew its fate, it would always show its most powerful fighting strength. Hence, even though Qi Yuan had the upper hand, his losses would most likely be very severe. King Dexian rode on his horse and faced Fu Yunting from a distance. "General Fu, I know that I will definitely die today. However, before I die, there is one thing that I want to know. Who is behind all of this?" At this point, if King Dexian still could not see through certain things, then he would be too stupid. He had unknowingly been schemed against. If he did not know who his opponent was, then he would not be able to die in peace. Fu Yunting's face was resolute. There was no emotion in his eyes. "If I die, then everything will be over. What can I do if I know?" King Dexian's face was cold. The hatred in his eyes solidified. He was like a dying beast that wanted to devour its prey. Then, King Dexian suddenly laughed. "You don't want to say? Why don't you want to say? Is it because you can't? It's Li Hongyuan. It's your Jin Qin Wang Li Hongyuan, right? Ha ha ha, I had my suspicions at the beginning. However, I dispelled my suspicions later. I did not expect him to hide it so well. Does your emperor know? Do those princes who fought so hard for the throne know about this? Ha ha ha." Fu Yunting's face darkened. He waved his spear. "Kill." Regardless of what the people on Qi Yuan's side were thinking, as soon as the order was given, they rushed out. The troops from both sides directly collided with each other, and a cruel and arduous battle began. Shouts of killing, the clashing of weapons, as well as the sound of flesh being pierced, mixed together. The smell of blood permeated the air, causing people to suffocate. However, those sounds seemed to be abnormally clear. At this time, there was no formation. There was only the most primitive charge. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/134190014. HTML. Please click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile version reading website. Bicken.com. Chapter 5:15. In the end, there were too many people and He Zhihai could not achieve his goal. However, those who came to his door, regardless of whether they were big fish or small shrimps, as long as they were enemies, He Zhihai would not hesitate to take them all. The ratio of Qi Yuan to West Xiongnu was about 3-1. Although He Zhihai could take on countless people by himself, some of the generals were not as good as him. 1 against 3 was not a problem. In this way, the ratio was slightly larger. West Xiongnu's individual combat power was strong, but if they were to face several people, and if their physical strength was not enough, it would be good if they could exchange 1 for 1. Although they had heard of He Zhihai's strength on the battlefield, when they saw it with their own eyes, many people were still shocked. This was simply beyond the scope of a human. He Zhihai shook off the blood droplets on his spear. The people who were in the way had pretty much been cleaned up. He aimed at the position of the Western Han tribe's virtuous king and directly charged over. Because he had been his target from the start, the distance was not too far. Even if he wanted to protect King Virtuous Sage, if he died, how could he protect him? If he had chosen to escape at the beginning, there might have been a chance. Since he chose to stay, then he must have been prepared to die. When the virtuous king slashed the broadsword in his hand towards one of the Qi Yuan soldiers, it was suddenly flicked away by a spear from the side. The strength of the spear was so great that it almost made the broadsword in his hand fly out. King Virtuous Sage did not know that there was such a person as He Ji-hai. His hand was numb from the shock and he was shocked. The only time he met Prince Jin of Qi Yuan was not a direct confrontation. However, at that time he felt the strength of Prince Jin. If he was not careful, he might have died on the spot. And now, he actually met a monster. For such a person, he was completely unaffected. From this point of view, it seemed that his ending today was not only because of the internal affairs of the Xiongnu unable to be distracted. He hurriedly turned back to fight. A pretty good opponent. This was the definition that He Ji-hai gave to the opponent after one blow. Because it wasn't bad, the blood in He Ji's sea of consciousness started to boil. The long spear in his hand moved widely, creating a strong wind. In the blink of an eye, they had fought back and forth countless times. His sea of consciousness was getting more and more excited, but King Virtuous King was gradually losing his physical strength. He could also see that his opponent was not using his full strength, otherwise, he would have already lost his life. However, as long as there was a glimmer of hope, his body would instinctively fight, unwilling to give up. As the other side weakened, his spiritual sea lost interest. The great Sage King was such a big fish, it would be a pity to kill him like this. As such, the power of He Ji's attack also weakened. Just as he was about to, Su Bufu suddenly came over and snatched the West Han new great Sage King off the horse before He Ji-hai. He Ji-hai raised his eyebrows. In fact, when he caught a glimpse of the figure, he had already made his move. He glanced at Su Bufu and the people behind him. How could they hide from him? This clumsy and despicable way of snatching military merits. Haha, it was really the people of the Su family. He also knew the true identity of Su Bufu. He Ji-hai also knew that he had to deal with Su Bufu. A weak scholar, even if he had different experiences for several months, could he become powerful all of a sudden? Powerful enough to snatch people from his hands, even though he was holding back. Speaking of it, He Ji-hai was not a person who took military merits very important. He enjoyed the process, and the result was secondary. He showed a slightly strange smile to Su Bufu and turned to look for other targets, seeming indifferent. Su Bufu's eyebrows twitched. How great was the military merit of capturing the enemy's commander-in-chief alive? With this, it was possible to reach the sky in a single bound. Otherwise, he would not rashly make a move. Seeing that the war with the Xiongnu was about to end, his military merits seemed to be very good, and his promotion speed was quite fast. Many people could not reach it in their lifetime, but for him, this was far from enough. Seeing the West Han new great Sage King was close at hand, and was completely at a disadvantage because of He Ji-hai, he acted faster than reason, but he did not expect to get it so easily. Recently, because of the tight blockade of the military camp, Su Bufu still knew nothing about many things. From the beginning, he had a bad premonition, and now this premonition was getting stronger and stronger, especially those words that the West Han new great Sage King said just now. Although it might be the other party's plan to sow discord, Su Bufu still felt frightened. If it was true, then Prince Jin's game of chess was too big and hidden too deep. It could be seen from Prince Jin's usual style of conduct that he was absolutely not a good person. If he still held power in his hands, then the degree of terror would simply rise in a straight line. In this way, there was still a way for others to survive. In addition, knowing the Emperor's attitude towards Fu Yunting, he could only watch him make more and more military merits. Under the premise that he could not do anything, he could only go all out to win military merits for himself. As for the Emperor, obviously, he could only pretend that he did not know. As the saying went, the ignorant are not to blame. The military merits were obvious, and the Emperor could not do anything about it. He was bound to pave a way for himself. However, the battlefield changed rapidly, and there was the danger of losing his life if he was not careful. Now, naturally, Su Bufu could not think so much and could only bite the bullet and go on. Anyway, he had no way to retreat, and could only advance. Therefore, in the face of He Ji-hai's deep eyes, he pretended not to see it. He turned his head and said to the people behind him, Catch him! In this way, although this battle was tragic, as Fu Yunting expected, the Qi Yuan's loss rate had increased a lot compared to before, but it could not be helped. The final result was also gratifying. The West Han new great sage king was captured alive, and the rest of the people were either captured or beheaded on the spot. The West Han new great sage king was forced to kneel on the ground by 2 Qi Yuan soldiers. Because his hands and feet had been broken, there was no need to worry that 2 ordinary soldiers would not be able to control him. Fu Yunting sat on the back of the horse and looked down at the West Han new great sage king expressionlessly. Another general came forward and said, "General, 1653 Han new soldiers have been captured. The number of beheaded soldiers has not escaped. How should we deal with the captives?" Fu Yunting did not show any emotion on his face, showing the majesty of a commander-in-chief everywhere. Pass down the order, send people to clean up the battlefield, and the rest of the people escort the captives back to the camp immediately. The Qi Yuan camp was only more than 50 miles away from the border. They could not advance at full speed with the captives, but there was no need to worry about the current situation, and there was plenty of time. In the main tent, Li Hongyuan sat at the head of the table and slowly flipped through the official documents on the table. Fu Yunting and a group of generals under him lifted the curtain and came in. They were still talking, but after seeing him, they immediately stopped. The expressions on their faces were stiff, which looked a bit funny. Fu Yunting was fine. As his personal soldier, he was guarding outside the tent. He had just given him a silent hint, so he was mentally prepared. Li Hongyuan lifted his eyelids and glanced at them. "You're back." Everyone who came back to their senses hurriedly saluted, "Greetings to Wang Ye." "How is the matter?" Li Hongyuan lightly asked. Replying to Wang Ye, everything went smoothly. As for what to do in the future, Wang Ye, please give instructions. Fu Yunting said. "You are the commander-in-chief, and you want Ben Wang to give instructions? What do I want you to do?" Jin Wang Ye's attitude towards Fu Yunting had never been good. Although Fu Yunting had long been accustomed to it, but in front of so many subordinates, he was still somewhat embarrassed and uncomfortable. However, he could be considered to have copper skin and iron bones now. His expression did not change. Since Jin Wang Ye did not participate, he already knew what to do. Wang Ye, the commander-in-chief of the West Han new great sage king, has been captured alive. Does Wang Ye want to see him? Oh. Whose credit? Li Hongyuan seemed to be a little interested. Fu Yunting turned sideways and motioned for Su Bufu to come forward. "Wang Ye, this person's surname is Su Bufu. He was originally an ordinary soldier, but his intelligence was outstanding. In the battle against the Xiongnu great sage king, he made great contributions. This time, it was his credit to capture great sage king alive." Li Hongyuan slightly narrowed his eyes and looked at Su Bufu. For a moment he suddenly smiled. "You are all good men of Qi Yuan. Don't forget to count hailstones to Fu Huang. With such a contribution, I think Fu Huang will never treat you unfairly. The same goes for the others. Wang Ye, rest assured that this general will handle this matter well." Being stared at by Jin Wang Ye, Su Bufu only felt that his heart was about to jump out. There was always a feeling of being stripped naked and seen through. Although Jin Wang Ye was actually similar to the other generals present and was not familiar with him, in the face of Jin Wang Ye's eyes, he could not help but feel uneasy. He had to do his best to control his body from trembling. That feeling was countless times more terrifying than some animals being stared at by their natural enemies. Li Hongyuan closed the official document in his hand and waved to them. "You can go and bring Great Sage King in. We will retire." One by one, they felt as if they had been pardoned. They really did not want to face this living king of hell, so they filed out. Great Sage King was carried in by 2 people and thrown to the ground casually. He looked particularly embarrassed. "What are you doing? He is the Xiongnu king. His status is second only to the Xiongnu king. At the very least, there should be some basic respect. Take a seat." Although he said so, his expression was not the same. The living king of hell spoke, but he did not dare to neglect and quickly helped Great Sage King up. West Xiongnu Great Sage King's hands and feet were crippled. He could not use any strength. Even if he was sitting, he had lost his dignity. But his eyes were fixed on Jin Qin Wang. "It really is you, Qi Yuan 6th Prince, Jin Qin Wang Li Hongyuan," he said with certainty. Although Great Sage King was a very confident and even conceited person, he did not think that he was invincible. He knew that the winner was the king and the loser was the bandit. In fact, he had long been aware that he would be captured and killed. However, when it really came to this moment, he was still very unwilling and abnormally resentful. Especially when he lost without knowing why, he felt vexed and aggrieved. Li Hongyuan was still calm and indifferent. He understood the other party's meaning and did not have the slightest deterrence to him. However, the more it was like this, the greater the psychological pressure. After all, the unknown was often more frightening than the surface. Falling to this point, Ben Wang has nothing to say. "Now, I just want to know what happened." General Fu probably did not give Ben Wang an answer because of Wang Ye's prestige. Ben Wang asks Jin Qin Wang not to be stingy with his answer. Ben Wang can die in peace. Whether you die in peace or not, what does it have to do with Ben Wang? Li Hongyuan's face was still indifferent. When these words fell into Great Sage King's ears, he felt endless sarcasm. He could hear the other party's contempt for him. Even if he was already a prisoner, this attitude made Great Sage King's eyes split open. The more arrogant a person was, the more they could not tolerate others looking down on them. However, who was the living king of hell? Would he care about other people's attitudes? The enemies who caused him a lot of trouble in his previous life were just as now. When the virtuous king was taken out, he was hysterical and wanted to get an answer from Li Hongyuan's mouth. However, the virtuous king, who was no longer in the eyes of the living Hell King, was no different from other insignificant people. Thus, even if the virtuous king screamed until his throat broke, he still couldn't get what he wanted. Therefore, he was destined to die with grievances. It must be said that Great Sage King was completely crippled. Qi Yuan could not enlist him and naturally could not negotiate with the West Xiongnu to let the West Xiongnu spend money to redeem him. For a person like Great Sage King, his death was more valuable than being used to exchange for things from the West Xiongnu. Only someone with a brain would do something like letting a tiger return to the mountain and leave behind future troubles. Half of the reason Li Hongyuan came to the northwest was because of Great Sage King. Now that he had achieved the other half of his goal, well, it could be said that he had achieved it. He could prepare to return to the capital and deal with some other people. The blockade between the northwest and the capital was completely lifted. Fu Yunting wrote a report and sent it back to the capital first. However, the actions here did not stop. Don't forget that Li Hongyuan's original goal was to directly kill the West Xiongnu and completely cripple them. Therefore, just driving them out was far from enough. Fu Yunting reorganized the troops in the northwest and went deep into the West Xiongnu. Qin Tianming rushed over from Heaven's Gate and brought people to clean up the remaining West Xiongnu troops in Qiyuan. That's right, clean up. They did not care about any survivors. They had enough prisoners now. Although the Xiongnu people could be said to be soldiers, there were still only so many strong soldiers. Great Sage King had led more than half of the West Xiongnu troops. Therefore, when faced with Qi Yuan's army, even if they actively resisted, the result was still very little. After all, it was impossible to gather all the remaining troops. It was the same reason that Qi Yuan could not mobilize all the troops to attack New Xiongnu. It was the same reason that Qi Yuan could not mobilize all the troops to attack New Xiongnu. It was also surrounded by enemy countries. Fu Yunting's unstoppable force forced the West Xiongnu court to migrate again and again. This time, it was Qi Yuan's turn to use war to support war. The West Xiongnu invaded Qi Yuan, robbed the people, and killed countless people. Now was the time to take revenge. A tooth for a tooth, blood for blood. Being forced into such a miserable state, it was certain that the West Hun king regretted it now. Even if he couldn't find out about the virtuous Sage King's current situation through his own channels, Qi Yuan would definitely be willing to tell him. He would clearly let him know that he had been tricked, that he had been schemed against. He would make him regret it, make him feel guilty, and make him feel fear. Disturbing the hearts of the people and shaking the morale of the army was a very common method. The North Xiongnu did not stay idle either. A few decades ago, when they were defeated by Qi Yuan, the West Xiongnu did the same and occupied a large area of the North Xiongnu territory. At this time, they naturally wanted to give them a taste of their own medicine. As for the previous alliance, what was it? It was already like this when the West Xiong slaves secretly robbed the North Xiong slaves. Although he might have realized that he might have been used by others, what could he do? Qi Yuan was already unstoppable. If he went against him, it would undoubtedly be like striking a rock with an egg. Naturally, he had to seize the opportunity to plunder some benefits for himself. As for whether he would become Qi Yuan's next target, that was a matter for later. Right now, he didn't want to think about it. It was fine to deceive himself or deceive others. After Fu Yunting led the army thousands of miles into the West Xiongnu territory, the imperial court finally received specific information about the Northwest. Fu Yunting deliberately slowed down the submission of the memorial. Other than Lu Qingdi, everyone else was overjoyed. Fu Yunting's memorial only said that the West Xiongnu had schemed to drive a wedge between the Northwest Army and the imperial court. Fu Yunting had a flash of inspiration and decided to simply beat them at their own game. He would seal off the Northwest and then use the tactic of sowing discord between the West Xiongnu and the North Xiongnu. As the saying goes, when a general is outside, the emperor's orders cannot be followed. He asked for the emperor's forgiveness. Now, Qi Yuan's army had completely driven out the Xiongnu army. Not only did they recapture a large area of the Qi Yuan's lost territory, but they also occupied the West Xiongnu territory and expanded Qi Yuan's territory. With this kind of contribution, Lu Qingdi wanted to kill Fu Yunting and wipe out his entire family without damaging his own reputation? No matter how Lu Qingdi felt about Fu Yunting, as an emperor, even if he was not ambitious, expanding the territory under his rule was a merit that would be immortalized for generations to come. Because, other than being furious, he was also happy like everyone else. These two extremes of emotions caused him to be conflicted. It was fine in front of the ministers, but in front of the eunuchs, he would be happy for a while and then angry for a while. This made people suspect that there was something wrong with Lu Qingdi. As for the war in the Northwest, they only knew that the West Xiongnu had won a complete victory. Just like the North Xiongnu, the West Xiongnu had been routed. However, the specific situation was still unknown. They could only wait for them to return to the imperial court. Lu Qingdi had always thought that his arrangements were good, even if not flawless. However, because no one else knew about it, it was unlikely that there would be any mistakes. But now, he was given a completely opposite result. Just where did the problem lie? He had never considered that Li Suyen would betray him and that his son was the mastermind behind the scenes. Other things aside, there was one thing that needed to be released as soon as possible. Wu Anho's people had to be released as soon as possible. Lu Qingdi was now very sensible. He even specially asked Qin Shufei to summon the female attendants into the palace to appease them. Qin Shufei's current situation was not bad. It was enough to show that the imperial noble consort did not make any mistakes. Qin Shufei was actually working for Li Hongyuan. She naturally put in 120% effort to appease them. After clearing out most of the Xiongnu soldiers in Qi Yuan, Jingwan still followed Li Hongyuan out for a walk. She looked at the current situation in the Northwest. How should she put it? 9 out of 10 houses were empty. Although this was expected, she still couldn't help but feel sad when she saw it with her own eyes. The Xiongnu soldiers were inhumane. They burned, killed, and plundered. They were worse than animals. Although Qi Yuan's army had penetrated deep into the Xiongnu's hinterland, they were still not as bloody and cruel as the Xiongnu soldiers. Not to mention the ordinary civilians, they basically wouldn't touch them. Even the nobles who encountered the Xiongnu soldiers would rob them and kill them without exception. However, they basically didn't touch the old, weak, women, and children. They even left a certain amount of food for them. As for what would happen in the future, whether they would stubbornly survive or starve to death after running out of food had nothing to do with them. They only cared about the present. At the very least, they had to maintain their humanity. If you feel uncomfortable, don't look." Li Hongyuan comforted Jingwan. She shook her head. "It's nothing. It's just some empty houses. It's still bearable." However, with the current situation in the northwest, if they wanted to restore it to its former state, they would probably have to migrate people from other places. This would be a big project. It was obvious that under normal circumstances, it would be difficult for those people to take the initiative to come over. After all, it was just after the war. Ordinary people would still be afraid. Moreover, people paid particular attention to returning to their roots. If it was not a last resort, no one would want to leave their home. Although moving to the northwest might give them a certain amount of subsidies, for the current people, they all hoped for stability and liked peace. That little bit of subsidy was not enough to move them. Going to a strange place would cause them to develop some negative emotions. The current environment made most people not so fond of excitement and lacked the spirit of adventure. If they were in an unfamiliar place, they would be restless. You don't have to worry about this matter. When the time comes, it will be dealt with. If the imperial court is merciful, it's just a matter of more money. Or, there's nothing at all. After a long time, you'll get used to it and it won't matter. I don't want to care and I'm not worried. It's just moving to another place. It's not a big deal. Jingwan shook her head. However, habit was a scary thing. Sometimes, you can't deny its strength. At this time, Lucheng Emperor no longer cared about anything and directly issued an imperial edict for Jin Qinhuang to return to the capital. At this time, it was already the end of February. According to Li Hongyuan's virtue, even if there was an imperial edict, he would certainly not rush back. The time spent on the road would be several times more than when he came. After all, he missed the great scenery of the northwest. Naturally, he couldn't miss the scenery on the way back. Jingwan's carriage sickness wasn't that serious now, but in comparison, she still preferred to ride a horse. No matter how comfortable the carriage was, in the end, it was the road that decided everything. The cramped space in the carriage was really not comfortable. Although the flames of war raged ahead, it didn't have much of an impact on Jingwan. After all, she didn't personally see the bloody and cruel scene. Even if Li Hongyuan wanted to reminisce, he wouldn't let Jingwan experience it. In this way, although it wasn't as good as the trip to Jiangnan, in terms of Jingwan's own experience, it was more peaceful than that time. Therefore, this could be considered a good trip. Because they slowed down their speed, when they were about to reach the capital, they unexpectedly bumped into Fu Yunting and the others who were returning to the capital. It must be known that Fu Yunting and the others spent a lot of time dealing with the matters of the tale. In the Northwest Army, Fu Yunting could mobilize 300,000 soldiers. 1/3 of them were the border troops, the rest were the government troops of the various prefectures in the Northwest. After the Great Battle, they lost nearly 100,000 soldiers. This number was shocking. However, in comparison, the Xiongnu's casualties were even greater. It could be said that they were completely wiped out. Following Fu Yunting back to the capital was only a small half of the generals. They were basically people who performed very well this time. The remaining nearly 20,000 people were brought by Fu Yunting when he left the capital. After the baptism of blood and the test of life and death, they were majestic and imposing. At the same time, their killing intent soared to the sky. It was just that there were prisoner carriages mixed in with the army. It was obvious that when they returned to the capital, there would be a grand prisoner offering ceremony. Although Fu Yunting did this to create momentum for himself, he had defeated a country and captured their important personnel. Holding a prisoner offering ceremony was also a way to show the country's prestige and calm the people. Thus, no one would easily say anything. Even Lu Qingdi knew that this was to increase Fu Yunting's bargaining chip. He could only keep his mouth shut. Even if he was the emperor, he could not change this point. Qiyuan's great victory had already been widely publicized in the capital. Thus, it could be imagined just how grand of an occasion it would be when they returned to the capital. Thus, Li Hongyuan simply ordered his men to make a detour and head straight to the manor. They would return to the capital after they had finished reorganizing. The journey was not difficult. It was just that returning to a familiar place made Jingwan feel more relaxed and comfortable. In fact, As Li Hongyuan and Jing Wan expected, Fu Yunting led the Iron Army closer to the capital step by step. The city gates were wide open. Outside the city gates, there were densely packed common people. They lined the streets to welcome them, their cheers shaking the sky. At this time, they made people afraid just by looking at them, but it also made more people's hearts beat faster. How many people admired heroes? That Lu Chengdi led civil and military officials, as well as his sons, to the city gates to welcome them. Early in the morning, the drums were beaten, one after another, the sound never ending. Outside the city gates, Fu Yunting dismounted from his horse and knelt on one knee. He did not use the excuse that it was inconvenient to kneel because of his armor. If he really did that, he would be courting death. With Jin Qinhuang suppressing him, Fu Yunting had never been too conceited. He loudly sang "Long Live Our Emperor," and the soldiers behind him all followed. Then, he presented the West Xiongnu virtuous king and the captives to Lu Chengdi. Putting aside Fu Yunting, Lu Chengdi was still quite happy. Whether it was for face or sincerity, at this time, they all clapped their hands and shouted that they would all be rewarded. Then, the captives on the prison cart were all pressed down and forced to kneel on the ground. Large swords were placed on their necks, and with a command, heads fell to the ground one by one. The virtuous king was at the back, and people were killed from the front. Anyone who was at the back could see the whole process clearly. Killing people on the battlefield was one thing, but this kind of psychological pressure caused by seeing your comrades' heads being chopped off, and then it was your turn. If your endurance was slightly weaker, you might go crazy on the spot. Putting the virtuous king at the back, it was obvious that he would bear the most pressure. However, the virtuous king ignored it all. Even if he was beaten by the Qi Yuan soldiers, he still held his head high. That was his pride, and he would not lower his head to anyone at any time. The virtuous king stared at Lu Chengdi, and at some point, he suddenly laughed. It was not the despair and unwillingness of dying, but it was relief, and even a little bit of schadenfreude. The virtuous king saw that the current Lu Chengdi was not his son's opponent at all. On the way from the northwest to the Qi Yuan's capital, the virtuous king had thought it through. He had fallen to this point, and there was nothing to complain about, but there was some regret in his heart. He regretted that he did not know more about the person who put him in this situation. If he had known earlier, perhaps the ending would have been different. The virtuous king's head rolled to the ground, covered with dust. He was supposed to be a hero of his generation, but he met a terrible opponent. It could be said that he was born at the wrong time, and in the end, he could only be separated from his body and die in a foreign land with regret. Under normal circumstances, a dead person would be like a tiger, and people would be afraid. However, because the enemy had committed a heinous crime in their own country, so when the people saw it, they only felt unusually happy and cheered loudly. The blood stain was completed, and the majesty of the imperial family was once again raised to another level. Everyone has had a hard journey. I order people to set up a banquet in the palace with good wine and good food to welcome you. Now go home for the time being and wash up. Thank you for your kindness, Your Majesty. Those who originally had houses in the capital naturally went home, and those who remained went to the Shishan barracks to settle down. It had become a tradition to set up a banquet in the palace to entertain the meritorious officials who had returned home. However, Fu Yunting always felt that Lu Chengdi's eyes were gloomy when he looked at him. He did not know if this banquet would be a trap for him. Similar thoughts flashed through his mind, but Fu Yunting did not care. The banquet was at night, and Lu Chengdi was anxious. He had waited for so long, and there was no need to be anxious now. Therefore, he would be a magnanimous emperor. Of course, for the time being, Lu Chengdi could not tell Fu Yunting what happened, but he could first find out the whole story through other channels, such as Yu Zhongqing and Li Suyen. As Lu Chengdi's left and right arms, these two people were worthy of his trust. They usually had very little interaction, and at this time, Lu Chengdi called them in for questioning. To a certain extent, Yu Zhongqing was only there to protect Jin Qinhuang's safety. He could not intervene in the war in the northwest, and would not intervene. Therefore, he only said some personal matters about Jin Qinhuang, and expressed that he did not know anything else. Thus, Lu Chengdi could not say anything. He waved his hand and let him go out first. Li Suyen, as the Zhua Qin Wang of the Blackguard, was the next commander of the Blackguard. The most important task that Lu Chengdi taught him was also the idea that Li Suyen came up with for the emperor. Speak. Lu Chengdi did not treat this official who was nominally an adopted son, but was actually his own son, as a son. He was more like Yu Zhongqing, a useful and trustworthy official, which meant that he could abandon him at any time. If he wanted to give, he could give. If he did not want to, he could immediately take it back. The news in the northwest was blocked, but Li Suyen held the Blackguard, which was originally extraordinary. If he really wanted to pass on the news, would he really be trapped? Based on this point, Lu Chengdi's expression was quite bad. Li Suyen's expression did not change. He knelt there and looked very quiet. That's right, quiet. For someone like him, who had a heavy aura of hostility, his current state was actually very strange. But in Lu Chengdi's eyes, it was not strange. Probably in his eyes, this was a normal situation. Replying to Your Majesty, this official followed the original plan and tactfully informed Jin Qinhuang of some matters. However, Wang Yi did not believe it and thought that this official had some animosity with Fu Yunting at some place and was obstructing him. Wang Yi said that the emperor is the emperor, a rare wise monarch, a wise lord. It is impossible for him to make such a ridiculous decision when the country is in danger. Even if he had any opinions about Fu Yunting, he would choose to deal with it after the fact, or change the commander-in-chief, and not use such a method to disregard the country and the people. Oh! Hearing this, Lu Chengdi felt his face burning. But because no one dared to look directly at the emperor's face, he did not lose face. As if there was something stuck in his throat, he could not spit it out or swallow it. He did not know if he should be angry at his son for ruining things, or happy that his image in his son's heart was so wise and powerful, or should he feel ashamed that he did not live up to his name. After that, Wang Ye locked this official up and waited until he returned to the capital for the emperor to deal with. As his Blackguard, because this matter was serious, it was naturally impossible to tell them. Li Suyen could only obediently be locked up. Even if he had the chance, he did not dare to contact the emperor. After all, if he was discovered, the emperor's image would be completely ruined and his good reputation would no longer exist. Since he was so considerate of the emperor, Lu Chengdi naturally could not blame him. It was not that Lu Chengdi did not have any suspicions, but this matter was only known by Li Suyen, so there was no way to verify it. You can withdraw first. Lu Chengdi waved his hand weakly. Your Majesty, this official dares to say that after Wang Ye returns to the capital, he will definitely ask you to verify this matter. How should this official answer? Please enlighten me. Li Suyen impolitely added to Lu Chengdi's troubles. Lu Chengdi had a headache. That's right, how should he deal with this matter? That son was not easy to fool. It was impossible to push the matter to Li Suyen. At that time, no matter from which angle, the lightest punishment would be dismissal and investigation, and the heaviest punishment would be death. If it was someone else, Lu Chengdi would give it up. But Li Suyen was his trusted official and was also his son. It was very easy to use him. There were few things that he was dissatisfied with. He definitely did not want to see something happen because of this kind of groundless accusation. So in order to protect Li Suyen, he had to appease his son with this excuse and not involve himself. Just thinking about it gave him a splitting headache. You can withdraw first. I will deal with this matter. Yes, this official will withdraw. Li Suyen also left in a very natural and unrestrained manner. Lu Chengdi knew that Li Hongyuan had gone to the village. He was originally anxious to see him, but now he did not think so. But it seemed that it was too late. He had already sent someone to call his son back. The living king of hell who was dedicated to deceiving his father, after seeing the person sent by Lu Chengdi, he gave him face and left. After returning to the capital, Li Hongyuan first sent Jing Wan back to the Wangfu, then entered the palace alone. After seeing his son, Lu Chengdi asked about his son's well-being, expressing the concern of a father to his son. He did not mention anything about the missing person. After all, if he mentioned it, the matter that he wanted to hide would also be exposed. Li Hongyuan knew in his heart. If Lu Chengdi did not say anything, he did not mention it as well. He seemed to be very considerate, but his eyes seemed to be very deep. He seemed to know everything. But because he was his father, there were some things that he could not see through. At least on the surface, he could save his face. Lu Chengdi held his breath. If this was really the case, then this son deliberately ruined his plan, and he could not say anything. In his opinion, this son only thought that he did not like Fu Yunting, and there was no deeper reason. If there's nothing else, Imperial Father, I'll take my leave. Li Hongyuan flicked his sleeves and left. Lu Chengdi could only watch as his son walked out of the door and disappeared. As for his own suspicions, Lu Chengdi could not verify them. The banquet in the evening was a welcoming banquet and also a celebration banquet. Many princes, who were crowned as kings, would definitely attend, as well as important officials in the court. Of course, women would definitely not attend such a banquet. At the beginning of the banquet, Lu Chengdi said many words that seemed to be encouraging and gave absolute affirmation to everyone. In fact, he was just trying to win people's hearts. Those who knew about it knew in their hearts. But at this time, no one would care about it. Anyway, the army returned triumphantly, which was a very happy thing. Just when Lu Chengdi was about to reward the generals, Fu Yunting stepped forward first. https://www.beacon.com/11/11807/13474198. HTML. Please click here to report, no registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.beacon.com. Beacon.com Mobile Edition website: beacon.com. Chapter 5:16. No one knew what he was going to do, so they could only wait. Unexpectedly, Fu Yunting directly took out the tiger tally. Many generals who knew when to advance and when to retreat would do so. Not to mention the history of the Qiuan dynasty, such a thing had happened even when the Li dynasty passed down the throne to the third generation. However, there was something unusual about handing over the tiger tally at the welcoming banquet like this. Fu Yunting's purpose was very clear. He wanted to express that the Xiongnu people had been defeated. As the only pillar of support in Wuanhou, he was very worried and hoped that he could stay in the capital to take care of his family. If the Qi Yuan needed him, he could put on his armor and go to war at any time. He was duty-bound. He hoped that the emperor would agree. He was sincere. So, should Lu Chengdi accept it or not? If he accepted it, people would think that his table manners were too ugly. He was so intolerant that many people would be bitterly disappointed. If he didn't accept it, how could Lu Chengdi allow such an important thing to be in the hands of Fu Yunting? It could be said that he would not be able to eat or sleep well if he kept it in Fu Yunting's hands for a moment longer. Lu Chengdi quietly looked at Fu Yunting for a moment. There was no fluctuation in his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. The people who were whispering to each other quieted down. It was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. They were waiting for the next development of the matter. They didn't know what Lu Chengdi was thinking, but their previous speculation was correct. Then, the possibility that the emperor would take back the tiger tally was very high. Sure enough, Lu Chengdi just made a few excuses. Under Fu Yunting's insistence, he asked the people around him to take back the tiger tally. Mr. Fu, you are loyal and patriotic. You are also filial and righteous. I am very relieved. Fu Yunting humbly said a few words and retreated. He didn't care about Lu Chengdi's insincere words at all. How could he be completely loyal to someone who wanted to kill him? If the other party was not the emperor, he would leave some leeway and not show the hatred in his heart. As the saying went, if the emperor wants the subject to die, the subject must die. Fu Yunting's consciousness was not that high. However, thinking about his family situation, after knowing that it was the emperor's doing, he believed that no one would be blindly loyal. To be honest, Fu Yunting had no intention of rebelling. He was already loyal to the emperor and his country. After that, everyone toasted and chatted with each other. There were many princes who wanted to take Fu Yunting as their subordinate. Even if he didn't have any power in his hands now, looking at his father's attitude towards him, it didn't seem to be good. However, this didn't stop them from trying to rope him in. It was because Fu Yunting, as the commander-in-chief, defeated the Xiongnu and established supreme authority in the northwest. Not only did the soldiers respect him, but the common people also supported and respected him. What he didn't have, the many generals under his command, these were a lot of connections and couldn't be underestimated. Once they were taken in, these would become an important bargaining chip for them to seize the throne. However, although Fu Yunting was a military general, he had been in seclusion in the capital for many years. How could he be easily fooled? His performance was extremely smooth and could be said to be good at dancing. No matter how one looked at him, he didn't look like a military general. Moreover, he didn't have the armor. If someone who didn't know him came up to him, without giving him a hint, all the generals would probably not stand in front of him. The song ended and the crowd dispersed. In the end, this banquet didn't become a Hongmen banquet against Fu Yunting. However, Lu Chengdi wantonly gave out rewards. The other generals were basically given things like gold, silver, cloth, and silk. When they were given to Fu Yunting, they were given things like antiques and paintings. The former looked tacky, but they were real. The ones given to Fu Yunting looked high-end, but they were purely decorations. No one in the Fu family liked these things because they were registered and couldn't be sold. They were all fake. For those who didn't know, wasn't this perfect? Wu Anho's government definitely didn't lack money. The emperor was truly wise. He was meticulous and considerate. And those who knew only wanted to laugh. Out of all the generals, only Fu Yunting was special. Anyone who was labeled as special would be able to attract a lot of hatred. Moreover, generals weren't all uncouth, and the emperor had categorized them as vulgar. For those who didn't care about anything else and only cared about this point, it was undoubtedly a great humiliation. They couldn't do anything to the emperor, so naturally, they blamed Fu Yunting. Moreover, not all the generals admired Fu Yunting and ignored his age to recognize his ability. In this banquet, there was another person who was in the limelight. Of course, it must be Su Bufu. Su Bufu's face was injured, which belonged to the category of serious disfigurement. According to common sense, a face like his couldn't enter the imperial court as an official. But among the officials, as long as he didn't appear in front of the emperor and dirty the eyes of the emperor, they were actually quite tolerant, especially towards generals. After all, it was inevitable to be injured on the battlefield. They couldn't cut off their future and take their credit just because their faces were injured. Of course, under normal circumstances, those who were disfigured after becoming an official were not affected much, as long as they didn't meet a fatuous emperor who was extremely obsessed with looks or were so ugly that people feared them. Su Bufu's credit had been clearly written on the previous report of military exploits. Now Fu Yunting had affirmed it, which made Su Bufu's presence in front of Lu Chengdi was felt. Didn't Su Bufu want to reach the sky in one step? Now it was time to see if he could still achieve his original goal, because the person who made Lu Chengdi dislike him appreciated him very much. Some people loved the house because of its crow, and some people hated the house because of its crow. Su Bufu knew Lu Chengdi's attitude towards Fu Yunting, so he felt that Lu Chengdi's eyes were also unhappy when looking at him, and he felt bitter in his heart. That strong sense of uneasiness still lingered in his heart for a long time. Sometimes he even thought that he was deliberately targeted by them, but how could it be possible? It didn't make sense. After all, Su Bufu didn't know them at all before setting foot on the northwest battlefield. What reason did they have to target him? As for his true identity, Su Bufu didn't want to think about it because they might have already known it. After all, it was done so secretly at the beginning, unless, at the thought of being stared at from the beginning, Su Bufu couldn't help but feel numb in his scalp. That would be terrible. Su Bufu tried hard to deny his idea, but this idea always popped up from time to time, repeatedly reminding him that this was the truth. This was the fact. All of them had been plotted against from the beginning, and that person was most likely Jin Qin Wang. In fact, Fu Yunting had already pledged allegiance to Jin Qin Wang early on. He had no secrets in front of them at all. He was so transparent that he could see everything at a glance. In this way, he would fall into a passive situation everywhere. The more he thought about it, the more he felt scared. Because of these emotions, Su Bufu's eyes couldn't help but look at Jin Qin Wang. What kind of person was Li Hongyuan? That kind of gaze might feel hidden in Su Bufu's eyes, but for him, it was very clear. Originally, he was just drinking quietly and had no interest in such a banquet. No one would take the initiative to come forward and talk to him. Sensing Su Bufu's gaze, he raised his head, revealing a smile that was not a smile. He also vaguely raised the wine glass in his hand to Su Bufu, as if he was greeting him. However, in Su Bufu's view, it was a naked provocation. If Li Hongyuan knew Su Bufu's thoughts, he would probably find it ridiculous. Provocation? What was Su Bufu? The conjecture in Su Bufu's heart seemed to become firm step by step. However, there was still a trace of fluke in his heart. Therefore, he did not dare to contact Prince Rue easily. In fact, if his guess was right, it was even more unapproachable. After all, he was a sinner. The land of exile was completely opposite to the northwest. He should not have appeared in the northwest. If he did, he would only be regarded as a fugitive. Everything about him was really in the hands of Jin Qin Wang. Then, those military achievements, whether he earned them himself or earned them through other channels, would inevitably not belong to him. At that time, it would not be a problem of adding to his crime. No one would think that his escape in the land of exile was a masterpiece of his own. It would inevitably involve Prince Rue, Gue Fei Nyongyang, and the people of the Su family. At that time, not only would he lose his life, he would also cause trouble for them. Now, what he had to do was to hide his identity and not admit it in any case. In this way, there might be a glimmer of hope. But in this way, everything he had done would become useless. Not only would he not get any benefits, but he would also bring disaster to himself. Moreover, Prince Jin did it so obviously. Did it mean that he did not care now? It did not matter to him whether he was exposed or not. Perhaps he already had a card up his sleeve? Then, all the suffering he had suffered was in vain? Su Bufu only felt that he was firmly bound in a big net. He could not break free and was almost suffocating. Out of the imperial palace, Su Bufu had a feeling that he did not know where to go. Although Prince Rue had arranged a house for him before, he certainly could not go there now. What was more, his home and his family were all in the capital. Now, he was reduced to a situation where he could not return to his home and could not see his relatives. Endless sorrow surged into his heart. He wanted to ask why on earth he was reduced to this point today. In fact, he was well aware of the answer. He covered his face with one hand to cover the sorrow on his face. Deputy General Su, this is the first time you have come to the capital, right? Presumably, you don't have a house. This time, you have made great contributions to the battle against the Xiongnu. Wouldn't it be a grievance to let you live in the barracks of the Shishan barracks? You both have the surname Su. Maybe you and Gue Fei Nyongyang's maternal family were of the same clan hundreds of years ago? In this case, I will not bother the two of you. I will directly let Prince Rue find a place for you to stay. I think for Prince Rue, this is just a trivial matter. Fu Yunting walked over from behind him unhurriedly and said with a smile. Just then, Prince Rue and others also came out together. Hearing this, everyone thought it was just a joke. However, Su Bufu only felt frightened. A strange emotion flashed through Prince Rue's heart. It was probably the so-called guilty conscience. Prince Rue did not show any emotion. If Deputy General Su is willing, Ben Wang will do his best. This humble officer thanks Wang Ye for his kindness, but this humble officer is a rough man in the countryside. A tree or a stone can be used as a bed. The barracks of the Shishan barracks are already very good. How can I feel wronged? I drank a few more cups today and feel a little uncomfortable. Please forgive this humble officer for leaving first. Su Bufu cupped one hand in the other before his chest to the people present, including Fu Yunting. Prince Rue nodded. In this case, Deputy General Su can go first. Su Bufu left alone, and his back inexplicably looked a little lonely. If you ask me, Deputy General Su, whether it's his words or his demeanor, doesn't look like a country bumpkin. If I wasn't clear about Deputy General Su's background, I would have thought he was a young master from a big family. Fu Yunting seemed to be a little emotional. Prince Rue narrowed his eyes slightly, and still had a warm smile on his mouth. General Fu probably also noticed this, so you pay special attention to Deputy General Su, right? Fu Yunting's face showed a smile similar to Prince Rue's. Exactly. Because I feel that Deputy General Su should be respected since he was born. He has the ability and wisdom. Such talents should not be buried, so I can't help but want to promote him. Lu Chengdi was pulling hatred for Fu Yunting, but Fu Yunting was also pulling hatred for Su Bufu. Why did the emperor treat Fu Yunting differently? Similarly, why should Su Bufu be treated differently by the commander-in-chief? Moreover, the commander-in-chief made a special trip to show his face in front of the emperor. Compared with other generals, Su Bufu had the lowest status. The greater the perception, the more serious the jealousy. Fu Yunting didn't care about the hatred on him, because those people hated him. Nominally, they were also generals under his command. Moreover, he had handed over the military power. Although he still carried the title of Defender General of the state, to some extent, it was equivalent to a false title. Whether the relationship between those people and him was real or fake, they would not have any contact with him again, at least not before Prince Jin ascended the throne. So, what could those people with ulterior motives do to him? Su Bufu was different. There were many people with higher status than him. He had no background, and no connections in the capital. This time, he was the only one in the limelight. How could he not be pushed aside? Even if he was rewarded based on merit, his official position would jump several ranks, and he would become a general without an army. Prince Rue only felt that Fu Yunting's smile was unusually fake and very annoying to look at. He didn't know that in some people's eyes, he was also fake and hypocritical. He only thought about how others were doing, but he didn't examine himself. The double standards were too serious. Fu Yunting clenched his fist and covered his mouth, laughing lowly. Su Bufu's current position was promoted by the generals above when he was in the northwest. Although he had experienced the Ministry of War's registration through documents, he didn't know Lu Chengdi. If he felt that his current position was enough, who told Su Bufu to be just an ordinary person at the bottom from the beginning? Then, he could only stay in his current position, neither up nor down, which was exceptionally awkward. Reaching the sky in one step? Fu Yunting was thinking about his family. The little time before was naturally far from enough. Therefore, his goal was achieved, and he left early. When Li Hongyuan returned to Prince Jin's mansion, Jingwan was still tidying up things. Although the trip to the northwest was basically done with business, she was not busy on the way back. Anyway, she should bring back some local specialties, or something. She had been away for several months. When she came back, she naturally had to go to the Luo family and great elder princess's place to visit. As for her married sisters, she couldn't visit them because of her identity, but she could still send some things. You're back? Did anything interesting happen in today's banquet? How could Li Hongyuan not know what Jingwan was asking? Just like that. After all, I just came back in triumph. Jingwan nodded knowingly. It was indeed impossible to take action at this time. Prince Rue finally got a son. Should we take some time to see him? Li Hongyuan glanced at Jingwan. Wan is curious about the child and wants to see him. Just tell me. Tonight, she reached out with a smile and hugged Li Hongyuan's arm. You know me well, my husband. He's just a baby a few months old. What's there to see? Do you still expect to see anything from his appearance? Oh, I know I can't see anything. I'm just curious. Who asked you not to tell me the origin of the child? Besides, it's been several months. Your third brother is happy to have a son. It's natural for us to go and see him. Do you know the etiquette? Jingwan poked his chest with her finger. You don't need to go to her. Lu will probably come here by herself. Lu had changed a lot now. Jingwan was a little confused. Why did she come to her for no reason? Li Hongyuan didn't explain much. In short, he was so sure in his heart. Well, in fact, this matter wasn't important. Jingwan didn't continue to ask. By the way, Ayuan, I heard that Governor Su was transferred back to the capital and promoted to the Minister of Rights. Didn't he just transfer from the same prefecture to the south a year ago? Why was there a transfer so soon? Someone tried every means to transfer him back. Naturally, he came back. What's so strange about it? You're also involved in it, aren't you? Tonight looked at Li Hongyuan with a smile. Do you think I don't know you? That Governor Su, well, now he should be called the Minister of Rights. He's a real old fox. Is it really good to get him back to the capital at this time? Do you think the capital's water isn't muddy enough and not lively enough? Don't forget the first time you met him. That old fox already had some doubts about you. Now, are you sure you're not looking for trouble for yourself? As the saying goes, the onlooker sees more clearly. The current Minister of Rights, Su Darren, had only heard various rumors about Jin Qinhuang before meeting Li Hongyuan for the first time. However, people like him were always cautious and believed that seeing was believing and hearing was false. Moreover, he had always been very confident in his own feelings. The first time they met, he felt a threat from Jin Qinhuang. Therefore, no matter what the rumors about Jin Qinhuang were, he believed in his own judgment more. This kind of person was actually quite scary, because they could see through the truth of things more easily than ordinary people. Rest assured, this husband knows what to do. You have to know, for uncertain and dangerous factors, it's often more reassuring to put it under one's nose. Jingwan naturally knew this principle. Instead of letting him secretly stir up trouble in the south, which was beyond the reach of the people in the capital, it was not bad now. At least, there were many things that could be reported as soon as they were discovered. If it was in the south, because of the inconvenience of communication, time would be delayed. In the end, even if they thought of a good way to stop it, it might be too late. However, once a storm was stirred up in the capital, it would definitely be much more serious than in the south. After all, there was only one ultimate goal in everything, and that was the throne. No matter how capable this Su Darren was, it was not that easy to control the matters in the capital. Therefore, everything had two sides. For the time being, it was still impossible to see which side had the bigger advantages and disadvantages. However, just whose idea was it to throw this Sir Su into the position of Minister of Rights? Although the Minister of Rights was a first-level official, comparatively speaking, the Minister of Rights did not have the real power of the other ministries. Based on the current situation, the Ministry of Revenue still lacked a left and right assistant minister. The Suzhou governor sitting in the position of assistant minister of the Ministry of Revenue was far better than being the Minister of Rights in the past. After all, because of the corruption that had not been exposed and the obvious dereliction of duty, the Minister of Revenue would most likely retire and return to his hometown in order to prevent his integrity from being lost in his later years. At that time, even if Sir Su could not take the position of Minister of Revenue, based on his ability, it would be easy for him to do something in the Ministry of Revenue. In the Ministry of Rights, even if he overturned the heavens, it would still be like that. It had to be known that from the governor to the left and right assistant minister was a horizontal transfer. The governor was the highest administrative official of a county and the governor of the border. The power in his hands was not small. For such a person to suddenly become a cold bench, it did not show on his face, but who knew how angry he would be in his heart? It was easy to imagine. In the beginning, they should have planned for the position of assistant minister of the Ministry of Revenue. In the end, they became the Minister of Rights. Other than looking a little better in terms of rank, what other benefits could there be? Of course, as long as it was someone with ambition, they would not be interested in a pretty hat. For example, from the Minister of Rights to the Minister of Appointments, everyone congratulated the promotion, but no one congratulated the horizontal transfer. Speak, did you do something good again? Jingwan reached out and continued to poke him. Li Hongyuan grabbed Jingwan's hand and placed it by his mouth to gently kiss it. This prince contributed to transferring him back. Of course, this prince still has the final say on what position he sits in. Just wanting to take benefits from this prince's hands is not enough. You have to pay a price that satisfies this prince. Looking at this man who took everything for granted and dignified, it really was asking for it. However, what could she do? Jingwan liked him more and more the more she looked at him. At any time, anywhere, her heart was beating wildly with him. Naturally, they did not need to consider how others were doing. However, although the war in the northwest had come to an end, there were still many things that needed to be done. For example, compensating the soldiers and their families who were killed or injured, moving the population to the northwest, and whether the territory that was snatched from the West Hannu would be redivided into a prefecture or assigned to the prefectural government at the northwest border, dispatching officials, dealing with various problems that arose during the war, and so on. These things could not be completed in a short period of time. Therefore, there were still many people who needed to be very busy. As the person in charge of the overall situation, Li Hongyuan could not be a hands-off shopkeeper so easily. Otherwise, it would not be good if there were any mistakes in the tale when everything was done perfectly. Fu Yunting was probably the most leisurely one. His hands-off attitude was really clean. He didn't even have to do anything. In the past, when he was in the capital, he still had a nominal position in the city defense. Occasionally, he would do something. Now, he directly closed the door and refused to see anyone. That was called arrogance. Jingwan packed a lot of things and went to the Luo family to meet the two new little nephews and a little niece. The two nephews were the eldest cousin, one of which was a concubine and one of which was a legitimate wife. The niece was the second cousin's daughter. Well, there were 5 children in the 4th generation of the Luo family, and 3 boys were from the first branch. Jingwan was still rejoicing that the second son of her eldest cousin had not seen the side effects of incestuous marriage for the time being. She hoped that there was really no effect. After all, some diseases could not be seen at all. Her best friend and sister-in-law, who originally did not care about this matter, were a little jealous now. Jingwan felt that it was funny. Her eyes fell on Sun Yunting's belly. "You're pregnant with the second one, aren't you? Okay, your second one will definitely be a boy." Sun Yijia rubbed her belly and said, "I'm just saying that. I don't really care whether the child in my belly is a son or a daughter. It's probably because of you that father and mother don't have any opinions about it. Sister Xian has always been a precious gem in their hearts. I guess they feel that they haven't been good parents and now they want to make it up to the younger generation. Sometimes, they even want to snatch people away from me." She couldn't help but laugh. "What about my third brother's opinion? Does he have any opinions about whether it's a boy or a girl?" Jingwan teased. Sun Yijia waved her hand carelessly. "His opinion can be ignored." Jingwan covered her mouth and laughed. Well, now her third brother was really under the control of his wife. "Don't talk about me. My son is already pregnant. What about my daughter-in-law? When are you going to get me pregnant?" Sun Yijia saw that Jingwan did not seem to have any intention of getting pregnant. Although she already knew the reason, she was in the imperial family and did not have any children. How could she not worry about her? Even if Prince Jean did not say anything, others would have opinions. It sounded like a joke, but Jingwan also understood what she meant. She was not prepared to give a direct answer. "Don't think about it. Regardless of whether it's a boy or a girl, I don't intend to marry our children." Why? Sun Yijia did not think about the issue of status. She just did not understand. When people who are too close to each other by blood marry, the children born are more likely to have congenital diseases. Sun Yijia was surprised. "There's such a saying?" Jingwan nodded. "Actually, for this kind of thing, if you pay a little more attention, you should be able to find out." Sun Yijia's eyes flashed. She seemed to have thought of something. "Are you also worried about Dasaw's 2 children?" Jingwan did not deny it. Some diseases can be seen not long after birth. But some diseases can only be seen gradually as they grow up. They are my nephews. I naturally hope that they are well. Sun Yijia had an idea in her heart. She did not mention this topic again. However, Jingwan pondered for a moment. When she really got into that position in the future, she might be able to include the prohibition of marriage between direct blood relatives and collateral relatives within 3 generations. She just didn't know how much resistance she would face. After all, in the current situation, not only was it popular to strengthen one's family through marriage, more importantly, marriage was a natural alliance. Marriage was only to strengthen such an alliance. However, once it involved children, there shouldn't be much resistance. After all, the world valued children more than anything else. However, as far as Jingwan was concerned, unless it was the kind of relationship that could not be any more distant and vague, Jingwan was a little repulsed by blood relations. Take Chen Zhengmin for example. She and he were not collateral relatives within 3 generations. Even according to the marriage laws in her previous life, they could still get married. However, when it was first mentioned, her first reaction was to think that it was not good for cousins to get married. Alright, she agreed to it later. However, she was disrupted by a certain someone. After knowing everything, Jingwan actually felt a little guilty towards Chen Zhengmin. Was it not enough for her to be schemed against by her husband? That was a wife like that. Jingwan wanted to ask a certain someone why he could not find a better wife for Chen Zhengmin. However, after thinking about it, she decided not to. If she really asked, Chen Zhengmin would probably suffer. She was going a little too far. She quickly stopped. It was best not to pay attention to people who were in a certain someone's minefield. Jingwan always wanted to know about other people's situations. When she asked about Yuan Qiao, she found out that she was finally pregnant. However, there was another surprising thing. When Yuan Qiao was at her parents' house, she and her mother found out that they were both pregnant. Jingwan blinked. She was a little confused. That aunt of hers was only pregnant with Yuan Qiao once. Not to mention giving birth to a son, she did not even go through the postnatal period. Now, after more than 10 years, she was actually pregnant with her own daughter. How could she not be surprised? However, at her aunt's age, in the current situation, it was a real case of an old clam giving birth to a pearl. Perhaps some people would scold her for being too old behind her back, but most people would be envious. It was a happy thing. If that's the case, it seems that I have to prepare more gifts for Aunt. However, she had passed the optimal age for childbirth. She was considered an advanced pregnant woman. Especially since medical science was not advanced now, there was a lot of risk during childbirth. Jingwan's eyes flashed. Gong Zhou was now very familiar with ordinary external surgery. His success rate was also very high. Then, was it possible for him to perform a cesarean section? Little Sister Wan, what are you thinking about? You look so lost in thought. Sun Yijia reached out and waved her hand in front of Jingwan. Jingwan came back to her senses and shook her head, indicating that it was nothing. However, it was indeed a little whimsical to let Gong Zhou perform a cesarean section. The world valued a woman's reputation. How could they let an outsider be present during childbirth? They would probably rather the woman die than make such a choice. The so-called, they naturally included the woman's husband, in-laws, and everyone in her in-laws' family. Even the woman herself was included. This was the reality. Even if they were trained to be female doctors in this field, they would still face many problems. The most important one was the use of medicine. Therefore, many things could not be taken for granted. However, some things had to be taken as the first step. Just like now, she gave Gong Zhou another new task because she found out that Gong Zhou used acupuncture to anesthetize the injured when he performed external surgery in the northwest. However, not everyone had this ability. Therefore, she asked Gong Zhou to try to make medicine similar to mafesin. Jingwan had never studied medicine, so she did not know what the main ingredients of mafesin were. However, with Gong Zhou's familiarity with various medicines, it was not impossible for him to make what he wanted. Wan Mimi, what's wrong with you? Why are you absent-minded again? What made you so absent-minded? Jingwan smiled apologetically at Sun Yijia. The number of times she was absent-minded today seemed to be a little too much. Jingwan finally restrained her thoughts and threw away those slightly heavy questions. Jingwan stayed in the Luo family until after dinner before returning to Jin Qin Wang Fu with Li Hongyuan. Ah Yuan, what did grandfather say to you? I'm still thinking about it. It's just some matters in the court and I'm considering the next step of the plan. Li Hongyuan stroked Jingwan's fingers. That's right, according to your grandfather's meaning, this time, your 3 elder brothers will all participate in the exam? In fact, it has already been delayed for 3 years. It's about time to participate now. The 3 of them were all taught by your grandfather. It may be assumed that he had the confidence to let them participate. The Luo family suddenly gained 3 jinshi, it will inevitably rise with the tide. That's right, this kind of thing, not many families can do it. Regarding this point, Jingwan was exceptionally proud. Li Hongyuan chuckled, don't mention 3, even if it's 30, this husband can also guarantee that the Luo family will be worry-free. 30. In the entire country, there are tens of millions of people, and in 3 years, there are only 300. For a family to have 3 appear at the same time is already very amazing. If there really were 30 appearing at the same time, only you can be open-minded. Jingwan was unusually helpless. Li Hongyuan pinched Jingwan's chin and leaned closer. Lowering his voice, he smiled and said, this kind of thing, this husband is not worried. How about, simply let Wan be the empress, then there's nothing to worry about. Jingwan met his eyes. You'll be my imperial husband? Li Hongyuan nodded. In this way, you will never have to worry that I will have a second woman. Jingwan softly spat at him and almost fell into a state of speechlessness. After a long while, she said, from the beginning to the end, I've never worried. Also, I'm not so ambitious, and that position is not for everyone. Never worried. Li Hongyuan smiled and said nothing. In the next few days, they did what they should do. At least, Jingwan's life did not seem to change at all. The imperial edict of rewards based on merit also came down. As for Su Bufu, as Fu Yunting expected, he did not make any progress. As for Fu Yunting himself, he was still the heir of Wu Anho. To some extent, it could be said that he could not be conferred a title. Therefore, his mother was conferred a title and his young son was given a 6th-rank title. Su Bufu was alone in the Shishan barracks. Wherever he went, he was alone. With such an obvious rejection, according to his EQ, how could he not know the reason? However, he could not care about this now. He was always anxious and uneasy. Because he had not gone to see Prince Rue and his family for a long time, they sent people to find him. However, Su Bufu was worried that Prince Jin's people were around him, so he naturally refused to meet them. It must be said that Prince Rue and his family were not stupid. They saw something unusual in Su Bufu's attitude, so they naturally no longer sent people to find him. However, in this way, they could not communicate with each other, which seemed very passive. In the end, Su Bufu could not sit still. That kind of suffering was too uncomfortable. Not to mention anything else, at least he had to remind Prince Rue to be wary of Prince Jin. Otherwise, he would not know how he died. Moreover, the Su family and Prince Rue shared honor and disgrace. If Prince Rue fell, the Su family would definitely not survive. The capital was also a place he was familiar with. It should not be difficult to be careful and avoid people. Besides, everything might be just him scaring himself, comforting himself like this. However, when Su Bufu was preparing to look for an opportunity, another person came to the door. It was He Zhihai, who openly ran to the Shishan barracks. He Zhihai looked at Su Bufu from head to toe and sneered, "Not everyone can give up literature for martial arts. Look at your weak appearance. People with discerning eyes can tell at a glance that your military achievements are fake. You didn't find the right starting point. You should take the path of a think tank. However, as a think tank, you can't climb fast. It's hard for you. This general doesn't understand what general he is talking about. Su Bufu tried to keep calm on the surface, but sweat came out on his back. https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/135749959 HTML chapter error. Click here to report, no registration. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicon.com. Biku Pavilion Mobile Version Reading Website. Bicon.com. Chapter 517. Enough. This young master has no interest in beating around the bush with you people. I know you're that Su Mingzhong who should have been exiled. His Highness wants me to tell you that to see the person you want to see, you must be prepared to throw your life away. If you know your place, you may be able to save your life. As for your true identity, don't deny it, it's quite annoying. The words were already so straightforward. Su Mingzhong wasn't stupid. His whole body stiffened, but people like him had always been suspicious by nature. Even if he already had an answer in his heart, he still wanted to carry out the final confirmation, making a final struggle. Who is this His Highness you're talking about? He Zhihai clicked his tongue, as if he was rather speechless. That's why this young master hates scholars like you the most. Speaking in a roundabout way, not the least bit straightforward. At the end of the day, the matter is clear, but in your heart, you still can't readily admit it, dawdling endlessly. Su Mingzhong couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. In his heart, didn't he also hate people like He Zhihai? However, he already had an answer in his heart. He wasn't happy. Seeing that He Zhihai wouldn't give him a quick end, he didn't continue to pursue this issue. However, there were still some things that he had to ask clearly. In fact, he didn't care about his own life and death that much. When he was like a cicada shedding its carapace, he couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't be discovered, but he didn't want to bring down his entire family because of himself. What about my family? How does His Highness plan to deal with them? In the Su family, you're the only one with some ability. As for the rest of the trash, how do you think His Highness will deal with them? He Zhihai felt that asking such a question was simply lowering His Highness's style. They were just a group of small shrimps. Would His Highness still put them in his eyes? Su Mingzhong understood, but this matter concerned his entire family. He couldn't hastily make a decision when he didn't have an accurate answer. He used to be an old hand at playing with words. Whenever he spoke, he would leave half of it, and in the end, he would just say, "I didn't say it." Thus, he had to be serious. I want a clear answer. He Zhihai looked at him like he was looking at an idiot. Su Mingzhong, this young master originally thought you were a smart person, but now it seems that you're just so. In what position are you asking this question? In an instant, Su Mingzhong's face turned pale. Indeed, he was the knife, he was the fish. To a certain extent, he didn't even have the capital to the bush. He Zhihai waved his hand. Young master won't speak with you anymore. I'll leave first. Think about it carefully. Your life is in your own hands. What you do is entirely up to you. His Highness, His Highness, His Highness, but if you do it, there won't be a second chance. His Highness, the mouths, the. Hasn't the He family always boasted of being pure officials? What does little general he count for? Su Mingzhong's heart was filled with unspeakable resentment. Even if He Zhihai was fiercely taught by Li Hongyuan, he didn't encounter any great changes in his family. So, in essence, he was still a muddle-headed person. He didn't like the roundabout ways of literati, but that didn't mean he didn't understand at all. TSK, this young master is this young master. What does it have to do with the He family? He wouldn't easily hand out information that could be used against him. Su Mingzhong stood in place, not moving for a long time. His mind was in a mess, and he couldn't make heads or tails of it. Oh, isn't this Su? That's right, Su what? A frivolous and disdainful voice sounded. There were also varying degrees of laughter on the side. Because of them, Su Mingzhong suddenly came back to his senses. The confusion in his mind seemed to disappear in an instant. He turned back to look at these people who hadn't forgotten to target him for the past 2 or 3 days. They were obviously a group of men, but in Su Mingzhong's eyes, they were even more disgusting than some sharp-tongued and mean women who like to haggle over every little thing. There was a saying that only women and villains were difficult to deal with. These people couldn't even compare to these two. They were all generals of different ranks in the army. It was really too ugly. Didn't they all say that men in the army were open-minded, forthright, didn't care about trifles, and were upright and magnanimous? Su Mingzhong really hadn't seen many people like this. Or perhaps he was just unlucky to have encountered villains. After all, how could a real man behave like this? When they met Su Mingzhong's gaze, they all fell silent at the same time. That gaze was sinister, like ice dregs, penetrating their hearts and causing them to feel fear. Speaking of which, Su Mingzhong used to be the assistant minister of the Ministry of Revenue. There weren't many people who had a higher official position than him. He could be considered a true leader. After years of accumulating power, his aura was completely unleashed. It was enough to deter many people. At this moment, Su Mingzhong clearly didn't restrain himself. Su Mingzhong turned and left. There were some things he needed to think about carefully. Only after Su Mingzhong left did those people gradually come back to their senses. When they realized that they had been frightened by the other party's gaze, they flew into a rage out of humiliation and revealed a sinister expression. "Hey, who do you think you are? Did you really think that just because, young general, he came looking for you, you could climb up to the He clan?" The He clan was a pure official. How could they express goodwill to a general outside the Northeast Army? He secretly swore in his heart that he must find an opportunity to get back at them. Otherwise, where would he put his face? This time, Su Mingzhong's actions were swift. In less than a night, he had already thought through many things clearly and clearly thought about his future path. Once the matter was successful, not to mention going one step further, but it shouldn't be as miserable as it was now. Even if his family didn't have riches and honor, at least they could be safe and happy. His son might have the opportunity to climb up again in the future and restore the Su clan's honor. Su Mingzhong went to look for Jin Qin Wang in a relatively obscure manner. Compared to his previous meticulous and detailed plan to look for Rui Qin Wang, his actions this time didn't put much thought into it and appeared somewhat casual. To a certain extent, how could this not be a test for his new master? Of course, this idea was essentially a joke. Su Mingzhong had already prepared himself to eat a closed door, but once again, it was beyond his expectations. Almost immediately after his request for an audience was reported, Jin Qin Wang met him. Su Mingzhong's heart gave birth to a strange emotion. He doubted whether his guess was wrong. Perhaps Jin Qin Wang wasn't as omnipotent as he imagined. There weren't that many people under his hands that could be used. From the beginning, he had schemed against him. Perhaps it was to take him under his command, and not to cripple the opponent's useful chess piece? However, after seeing Jin Qin Wang, this idea was completely dispelled. Su Mingzhong saw a Jin Qin Wang that was completely different from his impression of him. There was no overflowing hostility, no conceit, no high and mighty, no contempt for all living things, no coldness and nobility, no supercilious. There was only the pearl of wisdom in his hand, the wisdom to devise strategies, and the wisdom to see through everything. Everyone or things, in his eyes, seemed to have no secrets. This kind of feeling, compared to the complete exposure of his emotions, the simple cruelty and mercilessness, made people more fearful. Su Mingzhong was shocked on the spot and couldn't return to his senses for a long time. There was only one thought left in his heart. This was the real Jin Qin Wang. Li Hongyuan retracted his gaze and continued to unhurriedly flip through the letter in his hand. "You came to find Ben Wang. What is the matter?" "Wanting to contribute my humble strength to Wang Ye." "What? Are you preparing to betray your master?" Li Hongyuan's tone didn't change, as cold as white water. Su Mingzhong only felt a chill run up from the soles of his feet. His forehead also seeped with fine beads of cold sweat. This question wasn't easy to answer. If it wasn't good, he might even lose his little life that he had managed to save with great difficulty. Privately thinking, I should choose a good tree to perch on. Benwang is a good tree, but there may not be a place for you to perch on. Li Hongyuan dipped his brush in ink and casually wrote something. Don't seek to climb a high branch, but seek a small shadow under the good tree to stand on. You really don't have any aspirations. Li Hongyuan put down his brush and glanced at him. Su Mingzhong said in his heart, it wasn't that he didn't have any aspirations, but that he was in an awkward situation. He only wanted to seek merit in order to atone for his crime. Benwang knows. You can withdraw. Su Mingzhong was naturally unwilling to accept the fact that he didn't get any promises. But just as he thought, this was for the sake of atonement, and he was the one who delivered himself to the door. He had already devalued himself, so how could he ask for a promise from the other party? Su Mingzhong's heart slowly felt bitter. It was fine if there was no promise, but it also didn't seem to say whether he would be accepted or not. How could this be good? Could it be that they really didn't intend to use him? One must know that he was an important person in Prince Rui's place. He knew a lot of things that others didn't know. If he used him, it would certainly be twice the result with half the effort. If it was any other prince, he feared that they would hold him tightly in their hands and think of ways to squeeze out his value. In this way, perhaps it could only mean that in Jin Qinhuang's eyes, he was really dispensable, or perhaps it was a test that Jin Qinhuang gave him, waiting for him to hand over a satisfactory proof of allegiance. After all, it was just a lip service and was of no use. However, the most helpless thing was this kind of situation where there was no hint at all. Facing Prince Jin, Su Mingzhong didn't dare to continue to ask questions. Therefore, he could only leave resentfully. The things that he had to do later still needed to be pondered by himself. But as he pondered, he was faced with a problem. Was it better? After Su Mingzhong left, Jingwan came out from the side compartment. Looking at the direction of the door, she thoughtfully asked, Ah Yuan, what do you think this Su Mingzhong will do? No matter what he does, the result will be the same. There is no difference. Jingwan understood clearly in her heart. Sure enough, as long as the Su family schemed against the Fu family and implicated her, as long as a certain someone put a part of this debt on the Su family, Su Mingzhong would not be able to return to his original position. At most, they would be able to keep their little lives. When the family's property was confiscated in the future, they would leave a bit more money for the Su family. Perhaps for Su Mingzhong, this was already enough. After going through several months of hardship, it must be a rare and profound experience for him. That kind of nobility that was nurtured from the nest of riches and honor had almost been obliterated. But it might not be the same for the rest of the Su family. After all, imperial concubine Su had been favoring the imperial harem for more than 20 years. The Su family also rose with the tide. Although it couldn't be compared to other aristocratic families, but the wealth and splendor inside was something that not many people could compare to. Like this, to suddenly become ordinary commoners, that kind of drop, for those with a slightly weaker psychological endurance, it might drive them crazy. At that time, they would blame the heavens and accuse each other. What originally seemed to be insignificant problems, such as greed, would be infinitely magnified at this time. That kind of scene could almost be imagined. Therefore, no matter what Su Mingzhong did, the Su family was destined to suffer. Because they didn't know that true poverty actually came from the heart. It's just that I feel that if you really have the ability, there's no harm in using it. As the saying goes, society is like a brick, you can move it wherever it's needed. It would be a pity if you didn't use it when there was labor. Only doing things without giving any benefits? This husband understands. Understand what? Was that what she meant? Don't speak nonsense. Su Mingzhong was also a ruthless person. Since he had already made a decision, he didn't drag things out. Thus, Imperial Prince Rui, who had been anxiously waiting for this great general under his command, finally arrived. Prince Rue had always been a cultured, refined, and courteous person. What's more, Su Mingzhang was his cousin, so he naturally treated him differently. At this time, he completely lowered his status and acted as if he was his own brother, asking about his well-being and expressing all kinds of worries. For Su Mingzhang, Imperial Prince Rue's appearance had long been accustomed to it. In the past, he didn't feel anything. But now, it seemed that there were some inexplicable changes in his thoughts. Just using this kind of outer appearance to win over the people below, he felt that he was more than one level lower than Imperial Prince Jin. Whether it was in terms of means or ability, it seemed that there was a difference between heaven and earth in this point. Mingzhang, these few months, you have suffered and been wronged. It's all Ben Wang's fault. It's Ben Wang's ability that is not enough to protect you. Ben Wang is truly ashamed. Imperial Prince Rue's face was full of guilt, as if he wanted to dig out his own heart to show his sincerity. There were only 2 words left in Su Mingzhang's heart, and that was, too much. That's right, Imperial Prince Rue was a prince who was conferred the title of Imperial Prince. He held great power in his hands and had many supporters and powerful backers behind him. He was truly a dragon among men and should be aloof. Even if he was courteous to the wise, there should be a limit. But now, this limit had already been passed. After submitting to a new master, his mentality had completely changed. So when he faced Imperial Prince Rue again, he would always compare and then pick out many shortcomings. What kind of person was Su Mingzhang? He had experienced ups and downs in the officialdom for many years. Although he still couldn't compare to some old foxes, but he was indeed a person who ate this mouthful of rice. In more than 30 years of life, the only mistake was probably that woman who made him fall into this state, although that should have been someone else's design, but he himself was indeed fooled because of that face. His true emotions wouldn't be easily exposed. At this time, it was still very easy for him to put on a show of monarch and minister compatible with Imperial Prince Rue. When Imperial Prince Rue acted as if he was caring and considerate, he would be able to act as if he was willing to sacrifice his life for his superior. Imperial Prince Rue might have a large part of acting in it, but he didn't have any other thoughts. However, Su Mingzhang was different. He was acting from the inside out, without a bit of true feelings. At the same time, he also carried some subtle probing towards Imperial Prince Rue. Su Mingzhang wanted to know if Imperial Prince Rue knew that he went to look for Imperial Prince Jin. Su Mingzhang was still satisfied with the result of his probing. He could basically confirm that Imperial Prince Rue knew nothing. Thinking about it carefully, it didn't seem difficult to understand. After all, Imperial Prince Rue had always been careful and prudent in doing things. Moreover, he had a lot of trust in him. When the people he sent couldn't get close to him, he would definitely evacuate all of them and wouldn't place any surveillance around him. He was afraid that others would find out and thus discover the relationship between the two sides. Not only would it damage his interests and destroy the chess game that he had worked so hard to reach this step, he might also implicate himself. On the contrary, if Imperial Prince Rue was aware, according to Su Mingzhang's understanding of him, it was impossible for him to control his emotions to this extent. Imperial Prince Rue didn't have such deep shrewdness. What was Imperial Prince Rue's nature? He only wanted to appear magnanimous, but in fact, he was narrow-minded and couldn't tolerate betrayal. He wasn't much better than Imperial Prince Kong. However, didn't this also prove that Imperial Prince Jin might really have hands and eyes that could reach the heavens and conceal things very well? Imperial Prince Rue didn't know much about the Northwest, so he needed to get accurate information from Su Mingzhang so that he could carry out his next move. As far as Su Mingzhang was concerned, he still wasn't very clear about the internal information. From beginning to end, he was kept in the dark and was in a passive position where he didn't know anything. However, after knowing some things, according to his IQ, he could still infer some things. It was just that the results of those inferences couldn't be told to Imperial Prince Rue right now. Su Mingzhang really fooled Imperial Prince Rue. Afterwards, he got some good information from Imperial Prince Rue. However, this was far from enough to prove his allegiance, so he had to think of another way. And when he talked about business, he naturally had to care about private matters. For example, his family. This concern was real. For example, Lu Wangfei and the newly born Imperial Prince Rui's heir apparent. Speaking of that child, Su Mingzhong clearly noticed that a strange look flashed across Imperial Prince Rui's face. Very good, he didn't need to say anything. Just based on this, he already knew that the current Imperial Prince Rui's heir apparent wasn't Lu Wangfei's child. Sure enough, he still made that move to confuse the imperial family's bloodline. Once it was exposed, it would inevitably lead to the Emperor's thunderous fury. In addition to all the previous events, the Emperor's impression of Imperial Prince Rui had dropped a lot. With this matter, it was obvious that it would give Imperial Prince Rui and Gue Fei Nyongyang a heavy blow. Perhaps they would never be able to recover from this setback, and such a powerful opponent for the throne would be abolished. But if this matter was used as a proof of allegiance, then he still had to carefully consider it. After all, the Su family knew about the matter of stealing the phoenix to turn into a dragon, and perhaps even participated in it. Wait, Su Mingzhong suddenly thought of a question. That was, could the person who originally poisoned Imperial Prince Rui be Imperial Prince Jin? If everything was manipulated behind the scenes by Jin Qinhuang, then he should also know about this matter. There was no point in concealing it. Moreover, since something like sterilization powder was used, the child that was born, even if it was real, it could be made into a fake. Anyone would do the same. Su Mingzhong's heart hesitated again. He was wavering. Mingzhong, what are you thinking about? Su Mingzhong shook his head. Nothing, I'm just thinking about the current situation. I don't know when it will end. After all, this official is not good at war. I feel a little tired. Showing weakness at the right time and exposing one's weakness was sometimes not a bad thing. Imperial Prince Rui was silent for a moment and suddenly smiled. There will be a day when it will end. The result is obvious. Obvious, you will fail miserably. That's right, what's going on between you and Fu Yunting? Isn't his attitude towards you a little too good? If he sincerely wants to promote you, it's impossible for him to ignore your current situation. But if he has the intention to harm you, what reason could it be? You should know that this person absolutely cannot be tainted. Promote? What was there to promote a dabbler like him? At the very least, he knew his true identity and worked for Imperial Prince Jin. Naturally, he wouldn't spare any effort to pit him. His face was very helpless. This official also doesn't know. Probably when I was in the Northwest, I used too much force on certain matters and he found out. This kind of thing, as the Commander-in-Chief, shouldn't like it. Imperial Prince Rui instantly understood that it should be a fake military achievement. However, he couldn't accuse the other party of being careless. After all, the other party wasn't made for this kind of material. Moreover, the time was too short. If he was given a few more years and started from scratch, perhaps everything would be different. Even if it was worse, it would still be 30%. The lack of time caused a short-sighted success. However, at this moment, Imperial Prince Rui was unhappy because he couldn't achieve his predetermined goal, so he neglected one point. If it was really like this, and a common person at the bottom was found to have faked military achievements, how could he not suspect Su Bufu's identity? After all, could an ordinary person do such a thing? However, even if Imperial Prince Rui reacted, Su Mingzhong could also evade him. At that time, Imperial Prince Rui would only be entangled with how much Fu Yunting knew, what he was suspecting, and so on. He wouldn't think of Su Mingzhong. But in this way, it may cause more trouble for Fu Yunting. But so what? Su Mingzhong didn't feel the least bit guilty. People under the same person fighting for Narrate, making things difficult for each other was a normal thing. Right now, he just let Fu Yunting carry the black pot, that's all. He believed that with Jin Qinhuang's protection, nothing major would happen. Not only could he not accuse him, Imperial Prince Jin also spoke to appease him. Subsequently, both of them fell into a long silence. It was just that in Imperial Prince Rui's heart, the direction of their thoughts should be the same, which was for his great cause. However, Su Mingzhong was carefully pondering over Imperial Prince Jin's temperament and conduct. Could it be said that the Imperial Prince Jean that he knew in the past was just him in disguise? No, perhaps that was a part of him. It was just that in this way, Imperial Prince Jin's degree of terror would rise by countless steps. A person who was cold and ruthless, wise and far-sighted, meant that it was very difficult to deceive him. Once the deception was discovered, the end would definitely be extremely miserable. Su Mingzhong had already made a decision in his heart. He decided to gamble on an insignificant person. Even if he was involved in some matters, Imperial Prince Jean wouldn't care. Therefore, Su Mingzhong wanted to ask Imperial Prince Rue what the child's origin was. But when the words were about to leave his mouth, he suddenly stopped. This question couldn't be asked. If he was involved in it from the beginning and already knew, then it would be another matter. But now, if he were to ask when he didn't know, then it shouldn't be. After all, this kind of matter, the less people knew, the better. Imperial Prince Rue's trust in him was not false, but Imperial Prince Rue also had the common problem of many people in high positions, that was, he was naturally suspicious. Sometimes, just a small matter could cause him to have some suspicions, then the gains would not make up for the losses. Su Mingzhong suppressed the thoughts in his heart. First, he would inform Imperial Prince Jean about this matter. He would think of a way to understand the child's origin from other channels. As for the possibility that Imperial Prince Jean knew everything, it wasn't that there wasn't any, but he couldn't go and verify it. For some things, he would rather do some useless work. To find a breakthrough, he definitely had to start with an insider. For Su Mingzhong, the best choice was definitely the people of the Su family. In theory, it was not suitable for Su Mingzhong to contact the people of the Su family at this time. Imperial Prince Rue also wouldn't allow it. But Su Mingzhong didn't care. Even if he was discovered by Imperial Prince Rue later, he could completely say that he missed his family deeply and couldn't control his emotions. And even if Imperial Prince Rue was furious in his heart, on the surface, he would still kindly forgive him. Since he already didn't miss him too much, after not planning for him, he would have nothing to do with him. Su Mingzhong naturally didn't bother to care about his emotions. Meeting in secret and parting ways, but Su Mingzhong didn't think that there wouldn't be a third person who knew about this so-called secret. This time, not all of the high-ranking military officers returning to the capital would stay. They originally had some places that belonged to them. After receiving a reward, they naturally had to return to the border to continue protecting the country. According to common sense, Su Mingzhong should be one of them. But the people of the Ministry of War seemed to be good at polishing the emperor's will, so Su Mingzhong naturally stayed. Of course, this was originally the intention of Imperial Prince Rue and the others. This way, everyone was happy. Su Mingzhong, like Fu Yunting in the past, became an idle person with an empty position. For Su Mingzhong, it was good that some people were anxious. After all, he wasn't good at martial arts. With enough time, he could do some things that others couldn't do. Of course, there were still many people watching him, so he could only slow down. He believed that after a period of time, the number of people who would still remember him could be counted on one hand. After all, no one valued him and he didn't have any power in his hands, so who would pay attention to him? When the time came, Su Mingzhong believed that Imperial Prince Rue wouldn't give up on him. Instead, it was very likely that he would turn to the shadows and do some more private things, or even settle some private matters. These things might not be very important to the overall situation, but they could be very fatal. And these things, if he didn't pay attention, could become a fatal weakness. In the past, Su Mingzhong wouldn't be willing to do these things and would even have complaints. Even Imperial Prince Rue would probably think that it was a waste of talent. But now, no matter who saw it, it couldn't be more suitable. And before that, Su Mingzhong had already handed over a proof of allegiance. That was the specific name list of the officials who had submitted to Imperial Prince Rue. Perhaps this wasn't a big list, but at least it had received Imperial Prince Jin's affirmation. Thus, Su Mingzhong also slightly breathed a sigh of relief. He was afraid that he would become a waste. When everything seemed to be proceeding in an orderly manner, it was time to welcome this year's metropolitan examination. In Li Hongyuan's previous life, at this time, The war in the Northwest had not yet ended, so the metropolitan examination was basically unaffected. It was just that the people in the Northwest region basically didn't participate. However, the geographical location also created a difference in education level. Every time, there weren't many people who participated in the metropolitan examination. And even if they passed the metropolitan examination and participated in the final court examination, there were very few who could enter the second grade, not to mention the first grade. There might not even be one in 100 years. At least since the establishment of the Qi Yuan dynasty, the best result was only the 6th in the second grade. The metropolitan examination that was held once every 3 years was an extremely important event. It was also the time when scholars were the most active. Regardless of whether they would participate or not, they would all participate. There would be intense discussions and tirelessly guessing the final ranking. Those people who were favored and had the most limelight often had their own large number of fans. This husband basically still remembers the examination questions. "Wan Wan, do you want it?" Li Hongyuan seriously teased Wan Wan. Jing Wan only glanced at him and didn't respond. Not to mention how many things had changed between his previous life and the present. Based on what he said, at this time, even though he was in the capital, he seemed to be in an abyss of suffering. He had to deal with a bunch of vicious brothers and that old man who wanted him dead. How could he have the time to pay attention to the metropolitan examination questions? Who was he trying to fool? Li Hongyuan's lie was exposed, but his face didn't turn red. "All right, I don't know the questions of the metropolitan examination, but I do know about the court examination." "Wan Wan, are you sure you don't want it? Everything can change until the end. Ah Yuan, you should know this better than anyone else. If I'm not wrong, the questions should have changed in the last court examination. Besides, even if the questions didn't change, my 3 brothers didn't need to cheat to get the results. On the contrary, if the 3 of them had good results, wouldn't they be a live target for others to criticize?" Li Hongyuan smiled and didn't comment. He probably agreed with Jingwan's words. "All right, anyway, it was a joke from the start. Ah Yuan, I'm quite curious about the final 3 grand scholars. I don't remember the second and third place. As for the top scholar, you know him." Jingwan raised her eyebrows. "Zhang Wanli?" Li Hongyuan's face instantly turned cold. He snorted. Wan Wan also thinks highly of him. They had been married for 2 years. How could she not be used to it? In this kind of situation, he would at most say a few words. He wouldn't really do anything crazy. Thus, Jingwan didn't think much of it. She knew that there were only a few people who would participate in this year's examination. It wasn't her 3 brothers. Those who were related to the Luo family didn't look like they were cut out for the examination. That was Zhang Wanli, the youngest disciple of her granduncle. Since Ah Yuan remembers him, Zhang Wanli's future achievements should be good. At least during your reign. Jingwan's eyes narrowed slightly. Ah Yuan should be partial to using young talents. Since Jingwan had said so, it meant that she had a good understanding of Li Hongyuan. This point was undoubtedly pleasing to the King of Hell. He pulled Jingwan into his arms and stopped speaking in a sarcastic tone. He was even in the mood to talk about other matters. Zhang Wanli made a name for himself when he was young. He was the top scorer in his county. This time he was the top scorer in the imperial examinations. Nobody objected to this. It wasn't for the sake of good luck that he was chosen as the top scorer. If that was the case, then he was really amazing. It could be said that this kind of situation was really very rare. There might not even be one case in a dynasty, or there might not even be one in a few hundred years. Even if there was, then it might be like what a Yuan said, for good luck. If it was really done properly, then it could be seen as a rare treasure. After all, the closer the imperial examination was to the end, the more subjective it would be. And the people who graded the papers basically had their own preferences. If it could make them unanimously think that it was good, or even to the extent that they had no choice but to abandon their positions, then it was not a treasure. Fortunately, Li Hongyuan didn't know about Jingwan's thoughts. Otherwise, he wouldn't just be jealous. He would probably really take action to destroy this treasure. Anyway, in his understanding, no matter how capable a person was, they couldn't carry an entire country. If a country really relied on one person, then it wouldn't be far from destruction. Therefore, there could still be more capable people. It didn't matter how many there were, 3 years ago, he had already experienced the situation of his own people participating in the imperial examination. Therefore, his mentality was very calm and he wasn't nervous at all. On the other hand, Jingwan's fourth uncle had only passed the examination 3 years ago. His ranking wasn't very good. At this time, he was scolded by Luo Peishan. In front of a group of brothers and nephews, Luo Si wished that he could find a hole to hide in. After the scolding, Luo Peishan looked at the 3 brothers who were about to go to the examination hall. If your ranking is worse than your fourth uncle's, when you come back, wait for the family law to serve you. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/13574960. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com Mobile Edition Reading Website. Bicken.com. Chapter 518. Of course, Jingwan and the Luo family were not the only ones who paid attention to the 3 brothers of the Luo family. The 3 of them were already married and even became fathers. The Yu family would definitely pay special attention to them. Oh, except for the people of Ding General Manor. Although old Madam Sun resolutely solved most of the problems, would the rest of the people be quiet? Naive. Sun Ijia's 2 brothers were fighting fiercely, and it was unusually white-hot. On the surface, it was more lively than the fight for the throne between the princes. How could they have the time to care about whether Luo Jinghua had the imperial examination or not? The big things outside were trivial in their eyes. To some extent, Prince Kang's matter was second. The Empress was ill and could not care about it. Prince Kang's words were not very effective. It was good to obey in public but bad to the face. But later on, he would not take it seriously and continue to put the matter between them first. Prince Kang's power was originally led by Ding General Manor. The 2 brothers did not know what was important. How could others rest assured to put their future on Ding General Manor? Therefore, some people were moved and considered whether to choose another good tree. Some people had greater ambitions and wanted to replace Ding General Manor. The merit of ascending to the throne had to be divided into primary and secondary. The final benefits were also different. As the saying went, the cake was so big. Who didn't want to swallow the biggest piece? The people of Ding General Manor had not discovered these changes for the time being. Prince Kong was probably angry because his cousins did not take him seriously. Someone wanted to replace Ding General Manor's position, but he pretended not to know. He even pushed the boat with the current. Obviously, he was ready to give some people in Ding General Manor a cold shoulder and let them know how powerful he was. He did not want them to think too highly of themselves and even forget who their master was. Therefore, recently, Prince Kong and Qin Tianming had a close relationship in private. Qin Tianming was a military general, but he was also very smooth and cunning. Prince Kong did not doubt his loyalty at all. Carefully calculating, Prince Kong and Ding General Manor had a grudge. He thought he was a loyal general, but in reality, the master he was loyal to was Prince Jin. Prince Rui had been hit repeatedly. Su Mingzhong had turned against his master and became a deadly time bomb. His wife's separation from him meant that there might be problems between him and the Yu family. As for the Shan family where the right governor was, Shan Shuhan was actually a general without an army. Because the rest of the Shan family had been eliminated by Li Hongyuan. The Gong Prince and his father-in-law had a falling out. Half of the building, well, half of it was a dangerous building. As for the rest, even if they had already been bestowed the title of prince, they were all nothing to be afraid of, let alone those who had not yet been bestowed the title of prince. In other words, the current Qi Yuan was still fiercely fighting, but in fact, Prince Jin's family was already the dominant force. If he tried to usurp the throne at this time, the chances of success were not too high. However, Li Hongyuan obviously did not have this plan for the time being. After all, success was success, but in the end, the chaos would also be very big. There would be too much trouble, and he would have less time to accompany his wife. It was completely not worth it. Therefore, the power of those brothers would continue to nibble away. Not to mention these things, if one thought about it carefully, the Luo family actually had nothing to do with Duke Ding's Fu. After all, Sun Yijia and Sun Yilin had already been adopted, and the genealogy had already been changed. Not to mention that Sun Yijia did not even want to pay attention to those people. Even if Duke Ding's Fu wanted to reach out to the Luo family and show concern for Luo Jinghua, they were essentially unqualified. There were also Luo Peishan's colleagues, subordinates, and old friends who had already secretly prepared congratulatory gifts. Their views were the same. If Luo Peishan was not confident, he probably would not have let his grandchildren take part in the competition. Who knew how many people were envious of Luo Peishan? How could he, Luo Peishan, be so good at giving birth and raising children? The Luo family was obviously in a good position now, and it would not be an exaggeration to say that it was like the sun at noon. It was a pity that the three of them were already married. It was not that marriage was difficult, so why did they get married so early? The oldest, Luo Jingde, was only 23 years old. He had not even passed the Jinshe exam, so why did he get married? Sure enough, the other families were treacherous. They had taken in people early. However, the fourth young master and fifth young master of the Luo family had also grown up. One was 17 years old, and the other was 16 years old. They were both from the first branch, especially the fifth young master, who was the son of the first wife. Although he was not even a scholar yet, people did not think that he was uneducated. It was just that he had not gone back to take the exam. In the past 2 years, these two brothers had gradually become well known in the capital. Their momentum was similar to that of the three older brothers. For men 16 or 17 years old was actually a little early to talk about marriage. However, Luo Jinghua had gotten married at 17 years old. If they waited any longer, he would be snatched away by other families. Therefore, the Luo family had become lively again recently. For the Luo family, this was not the first time, so they were able to deal with it easily. Moreover, looking at the situation, the Luo family would become even more lively after the examination. In fact, there were many people who had their eyes on Jiang Wanli. In addition to the fact that he was favored, it was also because he was related to the Luo family. After all, he was the youngest disciple of Luo Peishan. Luo Peishan had never married and had no children. Obviously, he must be a descendant of Luo Peishan to take care of him for the rest of his life. Therefore, he was a member of the Luo family. His youngest disciple was like Luo Peishan's youngest son. Moreover, Jiang Wanli's family had a history of hundreds of years. Perhaps there were no people who stood at the top of the imperial court, but there were many who were scattered all over the Qi Yuan. However, Luo Peishan had another residence in the capital. He had long escaped with his youngest disciple. Other than his own family members, no one knew where they were. They could not catch them even if they wanted to, so they could only sigh and stomp their feet. After all, other than his parents and grandparents, only Luo Peishan could make the decision for Jiang Wanli's marriage. However, Luo Peishan's temperament was a little strange. It made sense. He did not marry, did not have children, and ran around the country. How could such a person be like a normal person? Even if such a person came to find him, he would probably be simply and crudely driven out. However, the Luo family's liveliness was not limited to this. After all, the Luo family's current momentum was obvious to all. How could they allow him to continue to be neutral? Although they could not have it, others could not have it either. It was quite fair to think about it. However, it was really uncomfortable to not have such a resource in their hands. They still wanted to do something. However, if they thought about it carefully, they would realize that every time they wanted to pull Luo Peishan into their camp, there would always be various situations that would cause their plans to fail in the end. Obviously, they had not reacted to it yet. If there were too many accidents, then it would not be an accident anymore. Under such an atmosphere, they would try to start. Qi Yuan's metropolitan examination was shorter than the provincial examination. It was only a total of 3 days. It would still be very tiring. However, the current season was good and the weather was good. Moreover, they had experienced 3 rounds of purgatory. In comparison, it should not be a problem. Therefore, in the metropolitan examination, there were relatively few people who quit midway. Of course, it was not that there were no exceptions. After all, the metropolitan examination was 1 level higher and the psychological pressure was greater. Anyway, there were people who quit every year for various reasons. After going through purgatory, no matter how good one's body was, one would more or less collapse when one came out. Regardless of whether one was happy or depressed, regardless of whether one was prepared to fight again next year or was disheartened, at this time, it was more appropriate to have a good sleep. It was better to think about other things after sleeping in the dark. All the exam papers had been sealed and there was a professional transcribing them. The transcribed exam papers would be reviewed. After a unified ranking, it would be compared with the original exam papers. This step mainly depended on each candidate's handwriting. According to the quality of the handwriting, the rankings would be adjusted appropriately. There would not be a big fluctuation. Of course, if one's handwriting was not good, they might be eliminated directly. However, such a situation was not likely to happen. After all, if one's handwriting was not good, they would have been eliminated before. How could they reach this step? The possibility of a mistake being transcribed was not high. After all, once a mistake was made, the person who transcribed it would be severely punished after being discovered. By the time the rankings were released, all the candidates would be full of vigor and vitality. Although Jingwan was not nervous, she was more concerned about the final result. She also wanted to see the final ranking of her 3 brothers. Although the Huiyuan exam would be forgotten after a period of attention, it was fine as long as they passed the exam. To some extent, the ranking was meaningless. Even if they were the top scorer, they might not be able to have a meteoric rise. Even if they were the same as the Jinsha, they might not be unable to have a brilliant career. However, probably influenced by the exam-oriented education in her previous life, after every exam, who would not care about the ranking? Although the results this time might be forgotten before the next exam. With Jingwan's identity, there was no need for her to see it in person. Moreover, because of her husband, as long as she wanted to know the ranking in advance, it was just a matter of a word. However, Jingwan did not do such a thing. When Jingwan was leisurely eating melon seeds, Eunuch Mu came to report the good news to her. As a senior lackey, he naturally came to ask for the reward in person, although it was not him who went out to see the rankings. His face was obviously young, but wrinkled because of Eunuch Mu's smile. He kept saying good things as if they were free. Eunuch Mu simply said that the 3 brothers of the Luo family were rare and unparalleled in the world. Jingwan slowly peeled a melon seed and put it into her mouth. It was more interesting to eat the melon seeds by herself. She chewed for a while and said, "Mu, and that's enough. Get to the point." Eunuch Mu looked serious and quickly reported the ranking of the 3 brothers of the Luo family. They were very good. They were actually in the top 30. Before Jingwan got married, her grandfather had commented on the knowledge of the 3 brothers. There was not much difference between the 3 brothers. According to her grandfather, they would definitely pass the exam this time. But according to the situation at that time, they would probably rank in the top 100. If they were not lucky, they might become Jinsha in the palace exam. Looking at the actual ranking now, either they had worked hard in the past 2 years, or the overall level of the exam this time was low. Jingwan naturally preferred the former. With such an awesome person like Jiang Wanli, she naturally could not let others drag her down. Tell them that if I'm happy, everyone in the mansion will be rewarded with 3 months' salary. Those who are ordered by you to run errands will be rewarded with 3 more months' salary. Remember, take it from your share." Jingwan said in a small voice. Eunuch Mu immediately put on a bitter face. "Yes, Your Highness." Then, he went to carry out his task listlessly. Jingwan laughed. Although Mu An was a lackey, in Jingwan's opinion, most of the time, the lackeys were just there to amuse him. She knew that as the only chamberlain of the living king of hell, he would have an exaggerated personality. How should she put it? Amusing? Well, Jingwan definitely did not mean to be derogatory. It was said that servants followed their masters. Instead of saying that Mu An's real personality was like this, Jingwan felt that he was more like a eunuch who was in power in a certain dynasty in her previous life. He could be a kitten or a puppy in front of his master, but he was ruthless, decisive, and used power as he pleased. Of course, Mu An was definitely not at that level. After all, in Qi Yuan, eunuchs were purely servants. At most, they could help their masters with some affairs. If they dared to meddle with power, they would not even know how they died. Jingwan was referring to Mu An's personality and ability, although she had not seen him being serious. If he was really like this, it was impossible for him to stay by a certain someone's side. The court examination would be held the next day. Li Hongyuan had attended the last court examination, but this time, he had no intention of going. Anyway, the court examination's format was the same. It was just that the examinees were different every year. It might be interesting if it was held once or twice, but it would be completely boring if it was held too many times. In fact, Jingwan was quite curious. However, she knew that it was not an occasion for her to attend, so she decided not to. She would definitely have a chance in the future. Although she could not attend the court examination, Jingwan was still interested in the parade of the 3 grand scholars. Although she had experienced it 3 years ago, her status was different. It seemed that her state of mind had changed. The final rankings were sent to Jingwan first. Unsurprisingly, Jiang Wanli was the top scorer. Jingwan had no impression of the second and third place. After all, she knew that there were all kinds of guesses outside. She had paid attention to them as well. Obviously, these 2 people were not the popular candidates. Was there a dark horse? Soon, Jingwan received the detailed information of these 2 people. This was the biggest benefit of having a group of capable subordinates. After looking at the information, Jingwan could only sigh. Third place aside, other than knowledge, one's appearance was also important. Therefore, it was not strange for someone to be in his 20s. However, the second place was actually close to 50 years old. He had been taking the examinations since he was a teenager. Logically speaking, people like him should be classified as slow in the eyes of scholars. Even if he made it, his ranking would not be too good. However, this time, there was actually an old second place. Was this a late bloomer, or was this the result of a sudden breakthrough? https://www.beacon.com/11/11807/136833727. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.beacon.com. Beacon.com mobile version website: beacon.com. Chapter 519. Jingwan did not understand the mindset of such a person. Did he think that this was the only way out, or did he have some kind of obsession? In reality, Jingwan felt that such a person was quite scary. Furthermore, it was fine if his family was wealthy. However, if his family was average, then the person who should be the backbone of the family was completely immersed in the pile of books and did not work. He placed all the burden on himself. Although it was true that passing the exam would bring a lot of convenience to the family, What if he could not pass the exam? However, to be able to persist for so long, it should not be too bad. However, there was one thing that was certain. This family would not be very harmonious. Ah Yuan, do you remember him? Was he the second place in the imperial examinations in your previous life? It was the same person. I remember him a little. Li Hongyuan lazily held his chin with one hand and leaned back. He was just an old man who was pedantic from studying. For the sake of fame and fortune, he only knew how to study. His body had long ago collapsed. He was able to hold on until the end of the court examinations and even had an outburst. He was like a dying man on the verge of death. After he became the second place, he was overjoyed and fell off the horse when he was parading the streets and died. In my opinion, luck played a large part in his being able to become the second place. It is highly likely that he happened to run into the same questions that he had previously passed. Furthermore, he had put in a lot of effort into it, including the imperial examinations. Jingwan was speechless. What was this? It was not easy for his luck to explode, but in the end, he had used up all his luck. She wondered how his family would feel when they heard the news. Clearly, the opportunity to soar was right in front of him. However, he lacked that blessing. Both he and his family were the same. This was a black horse turning into a sick horse. It was turning into a dead horse. Let's go out in a while and call Gong Jiu. It's up to you. However, I'm afraid that this person is already at the end of his life. Moreover, the parade route is so long. Who knows where the accident happened? Even if we manage to save him, there's no future to speak of. Naturally, don't think of bringing it forward. Such a person will think of it for his entire life. Even if he knows that he is not good, he will not give up. I know. It's just that I've done my best and left the rest to fate. Jingwan smiled. She just happened to know that her compassion might not be as strong as before. However, it was impossible for her to change her personality and become indifferent to human life. If it was someone from her enemy's side, she would definitely ignore them. Jingwan and Li Hongyuan went out at about the same time. The living king of hell wanted to give a place to rest. Regardless of whether the location was good or not, as long as the people below flashed the waste token of Jin Qin Wang Fu, those who were tactful would have to give it up. They would also feel honored and would not have half a word of complaint. In the restaurant with the best location, in the private room with the best view, there were several young ladies of extraordinary birth, and there were also flower escorts at the side. At this very moment, they were all respectfully standing at the door. Greetings to Jin Wangya, Wang Fei. Li Hongyuan walked in with a cold face and looked straight ahead. Jingwan followed Li Hongyuan and sat down. She smiled and said, "You're all excused. Speaking of which, it's us husband and wife who snatched your place. I see that this place is quite spacious. If you want to stay, you can." There were nearly 10 men and women, and the servants accompanying them were not even here. They were already prepared to leave, but they didn't expect that Jin Qin Wang Fei would have such an easygoing attitude. Moreover, what snatched? If the living king of hell wanted it, wouldn't other people offer it with both hands? Wang Fei Nyong is too serious. The fact is so, you don't need to be so reserved. Mama, let the shopkeeper have people rearrange it. Jingwan also saw that these people actually didn't want to leave. Especially the few young ladies. From the time they came in, they were obviously unwilling. Then when she allowed them to stay, their eyes lit up. Things were indeed as Jingwan thought. After all, they came with a purpose. It should be known that their identity was not that of the most distinguished group of people. To be able to book this place, it was not easy. Even if they offended people, it was normal for them to be unwilling. At this moment, they were using their eyes to communicate with each other. Especially when they looked at one of the young ladies, her desire to stay seemed particularly strong. The one she was begging with pitiful eyes was probably her elder brother. In the end, the few big men were at their wits' end. Although the psychological pressure of being in the same room with the living king of hell was unusually large, they couldn't bear to refuse their own sisters. Moreover, the place had been rearranged. Jin Wang Fei was pulled away by Jin Qin Wang Fei. The table was moved to the side, another table was moved in, and more chairs were added. To leave like this, it seemed that they didn't know what was good for them. Then, we'll have to trouble Wang Ye, Wang Fei. Jing Wan casually waved. Do as you please. She turned her head to appease a certain someone who was obviously unhappy because of this group of people. The imperial family had always had privileges. It was just letting others give up their place, that's all. It was just that Jing Wan felt that there was no need to be so overbearing. Besides, it was she who suddenly wanted to come. She didn't book a place before, so she felt somewhat apologetic. Of course, if her husband had a more distinguished identity, she wouldn't say anything and would definitely let people clear the place. Jing Wan whispered to Li Hongyuan, smiling sweetly. Her side profile looked gentle and beautiful, making people somewhat unable to shift their eyes away. Originally, his wife was the biggest living hell, and he was really angry. However, when he sensed some gazes, he followed the feeling and looked over. When he saw a certain man looking at his wife in a daze, his gaze really turned into a death ray. It was full of icy killing intent. Even if it was really foolish, it would probably be able to return to normal, not to mention just a little bit of absent-mindedness. That was also a handsome young Gongzi. He quickly shifted his gaze away in a sorry state. In an instant, the cold sweat on his forehead flowed down. His heart pounded wildly, as if someone was strangling his throat, almost suffocating him. The people beside him originally didn't notice, but this reaction was too big. Naturally, they hurriedly expressed their concern. It's nothing, it's nothing. You all should be quiet. Don't disturb Wang Ye and Wang Fei. The corner of his mouth stretched. He could say that it was because he was absent-minded while looking at Jin Qin Wang and was discovered by Jin Qin Wang, and then, at this moment, he really experienced that gazes could really kill. Jin Qin Wang's gaze was really too frightening. Just now, he really had an illusion that he was about to die. He couldn't wait to give himself 2 slaps. The handsome Gongzi tried his best to calm down, but it didn't have any effect. Instead, his body trembled uncontrollably. His heart was fearful and apprehensive. He always felt that Jin Qin Wang's gaze was still on him, but he didn't have the courage to take a look and verify it. Just at this time, there was a hubbub outside. It was just that this hubbub was not the same as the usual lively celebration. Faintly, they seemed to hear something about the second place of the banquet fell from the horse on the last street and was unconscious. When Jingwan heard it, a Yuan's rebirth, many things had changed, but some things were still the same. Gong Jiu, quickly go and take a look. Gong Jiu went quickly and came back quickly. Wang Ye Wang Fei, the person is already gone. Jingwan sighed softly. This life, was really https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/137258884. HTML chapter error. Click here to report, exempt from registration. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicon.com. Biku Gu mobile reading website, bicon.com. Chapter 520. Now that this kind of thing has happened, I wonder if the parade will continue? Even though they knew that this kind of thing might happen, but when it happened, it still affected their mood a little. The second place has died. For such an unlucky thing, the parade will not stop. On the contrary, it will be even more grand. Li Hongyuan understood this kind of thing too well. How could a mere human life be more important than a good omen? Not to mention stopping the parade and letting the world's attention focus on the second place's death, they would only think of ways to resolve it and divert everyone's attention. If they could instantly forget about the second place's death, it would be even better. Because there was a living King Yama holding the fort, no one at the side spoke, no matter what they thought in their hearts. However, when Li Hongyuan spoke to Jing Wan, his ears were perked up. But because Jing Wan and Li Hongyuan were well aware of it, and because they didn't ask Gong Zhou about the other person's cause of death, the others didn't know. Therefore, they couldn't remain calm. The second place died while riding a horse through the streets. When they didn't know the truth, anyone would make all kinds of guesses, and even guess if there was a conspiracy behind it. However, Jin Qin Wang and Wang Fei didn't speak. They could only scratch their hearts and lungs in discomfort, and let their imaginations run wild. Just as Li Hongyuan said, they soon heard movement again. Obviously, they didn't walk in, but Jing Wan felt that it was even noisier than 3 years ago. The sound of gongs and drums filled the sky, and the voices of the people were like a boiling cauldron. It seemed that the second place's death didn't cause any impact. Clearly, when the second place fell from the horse, how many people saw it? Even the people at the back of the crowd probably knew about it. But now, it seemed like there wasn't the slightest bit of impact. The news of the death was probably concealed for the time being. After all, it's normal for people of this age to fall ill. Being unable to participate in the parade, the world would at most sigh in pity. After the matter is settled and the cause is found, then it will be announced, and the impact will be minimized. Who is in charge of holding the fort today? Li Hongyuan drank a cup of wine. Replying to Wang Yi, it's Li Daren, Zuoqian of the Blackguard. Then, it's not strange. Who was Li Suyen? She had seen all kinds of situations, big and small. She had the ability to adapt. It did not affect the fact that the parade of 3 people had become 2 people. On the contrary, 2 of the 3 people were young and handsome. With an air-dried orange peel in the mix, it would be a total eyesore in the eyes of some people. The current situation was even more desirable. It could not be helped. A good-looking person indeed had an advantage everywhere, especially when it came to giving others a first impression. This was human nature, and it had nothing to do with whether one was obsessed with looks or not. The procession woke up from the other end. Jiang Wanli had really become the selling point of the parade. The people in front of him were chanting loudly as they walked forward. Composing poems at the age of 3, composing lyrics at the age of 5, writing poetry at the age of 7, becoming famous at a young age, reaching the top 3. No matter how much of it was true or false, in short, it was as if all the beautiful words in the world were not enough to describe him. Looking sideways from the window, she saw that the silk handkerchiefs and various kinds of beads were like flying rain, falling directly on Jiang Wanli. It was much more exaggerated than Chen Jingmin 3 years ago. Moreover, from the way those things fell, they should be very light. There was no murder like 3 years ago. This year's top scholar is really extraordinarily popular. Jing Wan chuckled. Didn't you see that the few girls at the side were stretching their heads to look outside? Jing Wan guessed that if they were not here, they would not be so reserved. Looking at the blushing face, the tightly tugging on the handkerchief, and the uncontrollable joy on her face, it was obvious that love was budding. Sure enough, she stayed behind despite the pressure for this person. Oh, it's good to be young. But she did not think about it. She was only 17 years old. She did not dare to say this directly. Otherwise, there was a high chance that a murder would really happen. It was said that many people wanted this person to be their son-in-law. Looking at it, it was not false at all. Hearing Jing Wan's words, Li Hongyuan snorted coldly and looked at Jiang Wanli with hostility in his eyes. Jing Wan pretended not to hear and did not say anything. She just looked at the scene with a smile. There was nothing she could do with such a jealous husband. Speaking of which, she was always like this in front of Jiang Wanli. 3 years ago, she saw Chen Zhengmin being selected as the Tanhua. At that time, although she and Chen Zhengmin had broken off the engagement, not many people knew about it. According to this person's narrow-mindedness, she wondered if he had been shooting daggers at Chen Zhengmin the whole time. She did not know at that time, so she was in a good mood. Now that she thought about it, it turned out that when she was not aware of it, some people were like walking on a tightrope thousands of miles high in the sky. A little evil wind would cause them to fall and be smashed to pieces. Whether the evil wind would appear or not, it was all up to the king of hell. Now that the dust had settled, Jiang Wanli was coming. There were some things that could not be avoided even if he wanted to. After all, he was an official and had to go to the Hanlin Academy every day. Thinking of the sad scene of chasing and intercepting, she was inexplicably gloating. After seeing it, she could go home. Jingwan felt that she would not come to see it next time. Well, if nothing unexpected happened, she would not be able to see it even if she wanted to. She could not leave the palace casually. When she returned to the prince's residence, she only drank 2 mouthfuls of water before the servant hurriedly handed her a message. Li Hongyuan opened the letter and quickly glanced at it. Then he handed it to Jingwan. Jingwan put down the cup and took it. Prince Ruwei is going to use Jiang Wanli to create a case of cheating in the imperial examination? She felt that it was ridiculous. Just because of his absolute ability, he was used by others to take advantage of the loopholes? Is this news reliable? It was sent by Su Mingzhang. Then there was nothing more to say. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/138204438. HTML. Please click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com Mobile Edition. Chapter 521. I haven't looked for him yet, but he's already causing trouble. Perfect. Li Hongyuan's face was somewhat gloomy and cold. Jingwan folded the letter and then burned it unhurriedly. Someone was complaining that there weren't enough stains on his body, so he was still trying his best to make trouble. Was Prince Ruwei's plan good? It was undoubtedly good. If it succeeded, it would be a heavy blow to the Luo family. Not to mention whether Luo Peishan could keep his position, the 3 brothers of the Luo family would have their futures ruined. Jiang Wanli was Luo Peishan's youngest disciple. There was a saying, a teacher for a day is a father for life. It was definitely not a joke. If something happened to Jiang Wanli, Luo Peishan couldn't escape. Naturally, Luo Peishan couldn't stay out of it. In other words, Prince Ruwei's original goal was Luo Peishan. If he couldn't get him, he would destroy him, along with the Luo family's roots. This move could be said to be vicious. Moreover, although the main target was the Luo family, the scope of the involvement was bound to be very wide. Of course, those who were responsible for setting the questions, depended on whether there were people of Prince Ruwei. If there were only a few people, and most of them belonged to the opposing faction, or were as stubborn as Luo Peishan, then he might as well abandon his own people and eliminate them all in one fell swoop. As the saying went, those who wanted to achieve great things didn't care about trifles. It was really not a big deal to abandon a few people. At worst, he would give more compensation in other aspects. Anyway, as long as he didn't lose his life, he could take it back when he sat on the throne in the future. It was a very simple matter. Therefore, there might be a lot of unlucky people. However, it wasn't so easy to make this thing perfect. Because if there wasn't such a thing, it was easy to make flaws in the evidence. Moreover, there was such a potential terrifying opponent. Even if Li Hongyuan didn't know about this in advance, when it happened, he would certainly have a way to salvage it. It was just a little troublesome. Moreover, now that he knew about it, Prince Ruwei's plan was even less likely to succeed. This didn't happen in your previous life, right? Jingwan asked curiously. Indeed not. Your grandfather is still the Minister of Rights. He doesn't involve himself in anything except for the matters of his job. He keeps a very low profile, which is completely different from the situation where he is on a killing spree right now. Naturally, people won't love and hate him. At the same time, he is a slick person, and other people can't do anything to him easily. The value of the Ministry of Rights is obvious, and there are a lot of things to do. Naturally, Nobody will try to rope him in or step him down. Even if the Luo family had 3 jinshi at the same time, after all, they had just entered the officialdom. Their words carried little weight and could be ignored. Although Jiang Wanli was a jinshi, in essence, it was just a good name. After entering the Hanlin Academy, he quickly kept a low profile and rarely contacted people. You've also severed ties with the Luo family. The Luo family is low-key and peaceful. So, the current Jiang Zhuangyuan was actually implicated by his grandfather, and his grandfather was essentially implicated by you. Li Hongyuan's fingertips rubbed Jingwan's white and tender cheeks. The Luo family is destined to be implicated because you are destined to be mine. The corners of his mouth lifted, without a hint of guilt. Anyway, you are a prince with no power or influence. Isn't it better if the Luo family doesn't get implicated? Jingwan said faintly. Wan, do you think it's possible? If I don't let the Luo family get implicated, won't the Luo family get implicated? Your father, in my previous life, always had a nominal position in the Ministry of Appointments. 3 years after I ascended the throne, he simply resigned. Now, he is working hard to climb up the ranks. There's no need to talk about your grandfather. Not to mention that he is actually ambitious. Your grandmother probably won't allow him to stand by and do nothing. Whether or not she trusts me, she wants to give you a strong backing. So, after all this time, it's actually me who implicated you. Li Hongyuan smiled gently, which was exceptionally charming. I will protect them and make sure they are safe. Jingwan smiled as well. Of course, I believe in you. Her eyes curved into crescents and she was exceptionally warm. She leaned into Li Hongyuan's arms. Ah Yuan, I feel that the Ministry of Appointments has too much power. As for the Ministry of Rights, those trivial matters can be easily delegated. If so, why don't we put the imperial examinations under the Ministry of Rights in the future? Li Hongyuan thought for a while. That's a good idea. That's not what I'm thinking. I'm standing on the shoulders of a giant, and the areas that I can influence are very limited. That's enough. No one can take care of everything. In your current position, you only need to provide an idea and a sentence. It's like suturing a wound and using anesthetics. Gong Jiu is already familiar with the former and has taught many people. As for the latter, Gong Jiu has already achieved some results. Didn't Wan say that the history of your previous life is very similar to the history of Qi Yuan? So, sooner or later, it will develop into something similar to your previous life. This is not something that can be done by 1 or 2 people. It requires the wisdom of millions of people. Jingwan looked at Li Hongyuan. To be honest, her husband seemed to have many sides. However, it had nothing to do with the so-called split personality. Moreover, his multifaceted nature seemed to be perfectly blended together and no one would think that there was a problem. But now, he was like a wise man who could see through the course of history. He was truly unattainable. The time between the general examination and the court examination was very tight. Moreover, if they wanted to create a case of cheating, it seemed that they would have to decide after the court examination. Therefore, they would need some time to make arrangements. This time would be enough for Li Hongyuan to plan a counterattack. Or he might as well nip the matter in the bud. However, they did not know what the living king of hell was going to do. Jingwan looked at his arrangements. Obviously, it was the former. It made sense. Prince Rui didn't think there were enough stains on him, so he wanted to get more stains on him to lower Emperor Lu Chengdi's good impression of him. He was afraid that Emperor Lu Chengdi wouldn't be able to get back on his feet. Therefore, Emperor Lu Chengdi wanted to fulfill his wish. Therefore, they did nothing for the time being. They just waited for Prince Rui to make his move. Prince Rui's speed was faster than expected. It only took him 3 days. Moreover, the speed of the news was quite fast. It seemed that within a day, the entire capital knew that the new crown prince was accusing Yuan Jiang of cheating in the general examination. The reason why they did not mention the court examination was because the court examination was set by the emperor on the spot. There was no possibility of it being leaked in advance. No matter where he went, it seemed like everyone was talking about this matter. The commoners were still fine, but the scholars were all agitated, especially those who had participated in this examination but failed. It was as if they had failed because of Zhang Wanli, this scum, and without Zhang Wanli, it was as if they would have been able to pass the examination. In just one day, because of Zhang Wanli's relationship with the Luo family, the three brothers of the Luo family became the target of a crusade. Because Zhang Wanli was the top scholar, he was directly appointed as an editor of the Hanlin Academy. He didn't need to take the exam anymore and was already working in the Hanlin Academy. Because of this, Zhang Wanli was naturally ostracized and looked at with strange eyes, especially those who had been in the Hanlin Academy for many years. It could be said that they were not proud and had no hope of promotion. To a certain extent, they were just waiting for death to come. However, these people were still self-righteous and thought highly of themselves, or perhaps they had talent but didn't recognize it. In short, they just didn't look for problems with themselves. Of course, there were also those who were very knowledgeable and were indeed a little arrogant. They did not like some things, but it was rare for such people to follow the crowd. Every time a young person came, those who were not well-mannered would be sarcastic. Those who were well-mannered would be especially cold and not easy to get along with. Now, Zhang Wanli, the top scorer, was obtained by cheating. It was as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Or rather, they finally found a chance to vent their anger. Zhang Wanli was very knowledgeable, but he was also very well-mannered. Even if he did not do something, he would still be open and honest in the face of criticism. One must know that cheating was actually very serious. Even if the truth was found out in the end, the impact would be considerable. However, Zhang Wanli was not too worried. However, his attitude was very infuriating. With the Minister of Personnel Affairs as his backer, he is very confident. When Zhang Wanli heard this, he frowned slightly. He was good at reading, but he was not a bookworm. After becoming Luo Peisong's disciple, he had traveled to the south and north. He had seen all kinds of people. His EQ was not for show. Therefore, there were some things that he thought of the moment he knew about it. Now, there was only one thought in his mind, as expected. Just as the others wanted to squeeze him, Li Suyen appeared with a few people from the blackguard. The people present instantly fell silent. Zhang Wanli, because of the cheating incident, we will now take you back to assist in the investigation. Li Suyen went straight to the point. Zhang Wanli's expression did not change. He packed his things and left. After they left, the remaining people immediately became restless. Even the blackguard has been dispatched. Looks like it must be true. He looks like a dog. I didn't expect him to be such a person. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/138645050. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. Please wait patiently after reporting and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version reading website. Bicken.com. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.